Chapter 646. Leng Shiqi retracted his thoughts. He noticed that Li Juning had the power of the spirit aperture realm after being turned into a ghost slave. He was more powerful than Li Gui. Perhaps this was the benefit of the underworld's upgrade. Leng Shiqi thought about it. It wasn't appropriate to call this ghost slave Li Juning anymore. Since you were proficient in the musical assassination technique, you shall be called the Sound Ghost. Thank you for the name, Master, the Sound Ghost said. His intelligence was higher than Li Gui's when he was born. Leng Shiqi sent Li Gui and the Sound Ghost away. He looked at the peak of the underworld. There was a huge palace at the peak of the mountain called the Lost Soul Palace. All the dead who came to the underworld would be judged there. Based on the sins they had committed and the merits they had accumulated, they would be decided which of the 6 realms of reincarnation they would enter in their next life. As Leng Shiqi thought about it, his figure instantly appeared in front of the Lost Soul Palace's entrance. This was a function of the underworld's upgrade, teleportation. As the master of the underworld, he could move freely in the underworld. No matter how far he was, he could arrive directly. This was his privilege as the master of the underworld. Leng Shiqi stood in front of the Lost Soul Palace. At this moment, there were already scattered souls that had arrived, but they all stopped at the entrance. He estimated that he would have to wait for the next upgrade of the underworld before he could open the Lost Soul Palace's entrance and let these souls in. Leng Shiqi was very curious about what would happen to the souls after they went through the Lost Soul Palace. Since he thought about the underworld's upgrade, he immediately went to the nearby Fengdu city. The Fengdu city's entrance was still closed. Leng Shiqi walked forward and immediately saw the conditions for the underworld's next upgrade. Underworld Territories current level, Tier 3. Conditions for Underworld Territories upgrade. 1. Recruit 3 members of the Underworld, 0/3. 2. Collect 2 high-level souls, 0/2. 3. 40,000 system coins. Seeing these 3 conditions, Leng Shiqi wasn't too surprised about the first and third conditions. He needed to continue recruiting members, and Leng Shiqi already had a preliminary candidate in mind. As for the system coins, that was within his expectations. After all, he had a lot of resources now, so he could still afford it. What surprised Leng Shiqi was the second condition. In the past, he had only allowed him to absorb some souls, but this time he was absorbing high-grade souls? Then what was a high-grade soul? In the past, Underworld's upgrade would require thousands or even thousands of souls. However, this time there were only 2. Just from this number alone, one could tell that high-level souls were not simple. Leng Shiqi suddenly thought of Li Gui and Sound Ghost. Could it be that only the soul of a spirit cultivator can be considered a high-level soul? If that was really the case, then it would give him a headache. Up until now, even though he'd killed 2 great experts at the unity of heaven and man realm, it was extremely difficult every time, and he'd almost lost his life. If he were to wait until he could kill a unity of heaven realm expert head-on, he would still have a long way to go. However, it wasn't completely impossible. After the battle with Li Juning, Leng Shiqi's spiritual power cultivation had improved, and he could use all his spiritual techniques more smoothly. In particular, the power and characteristics of the heavenly cycle star god shield made Leng Shiqi very satisfied. The self-proclaimed ability to isolate the spiritual power of heaven and earth could be said to be the nemesis of the unity of heaven and man realm. The most powerful aspect of the unity of heaven and man realm was the ability to mobilize the spiritual power of heaven and earth. The heavenly cycle star god shield could directly isolate the spiritual power of heaven and earth from the outside world, so the unity of heaven and man realm could only have the advantage of having more profound spiritual power in front of him. However, the problem was that the heavenly cycle star god shield was unique to the star race. If Leng Shiqi could kill his opponent, then it would be fine. However, if he used the heavenly cycle star god shield and failed to kill his opponent and was recognized, then he would be in trouble. Therefore, not only did he need a trump card to save his life, but he also needed a trump card to kill his enemy. When he thought of this, he suddenly remembered that he had used a challenge card before. The mission was to kill a spirit cultivator at the unity of heaven and man realm. Killing Li Juning should be considered as completing the mission of the challenge card. The reward for completing the mission was a chance to draw a top prize. He opened the system's lottery interface, and there was a top prize option. Leng Shiqi had also drawn top prizes in the infinite lottery in the past. For example, the fate skill was a top prize, and it was also a means for him to travel thousands of miles in a day. Therefore, he was looking forward to this top prize. Leng Shiqi pressed the lottery button. A light flashed and a very strange sword appeared in front of him. The reason why this sword was strange was because in front of Leng Shiqi, there was only a glaring sword shadow, and it did not have a physical body. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the top prize. Divine Sword Bright, consumable. Divine Sword Bright? Leng Shiqi looked at the name of the sword and began to search his memory. This sword seemed to come from a game world called Ancient Sword in his previous life. It was said that when this sword was forged, the three realms shook and it was dazzling, hence the name. Leng Shiqi recalled the information about the Divine Sword Bright, and his eyes couldn't help but shrink a few times. If he remembered correctly, the Divine Sword Bright's biggest characteristic was to cut off all spiritual power connections in the world. One had to know that in this world, whether it was a spirit caster or a spirit cultivator, the spirit skills used were based on spiritual power. If he mastered the Divine Sword Bright, then wouldn't everyone be the same as an ordinary person in front of him? There were also the top sects, the three great dynasties and the hidden families, all of them had large and small formations protecting them. As long as Leng Shiqi held this sword, he could easily break all the formations and barriers. Regardless of whether it was a battle between spirit cultivator or an attack on a sect, this was a genuine divine artifact. Perhaps this sword also contained some kind of powerful law of heaven and earth. Unfortunately, the Divine Sword Bright he drew was only a consumable item, which meant that it could only be used once. However, Leng Shiqi was not greedy. According to the system's rating, the Divine Sword Bright would definitely be classified as a god-level prize. And this time his lottery draw was a top-notch one. Being able to draw a one-time use Divine Sword Bright was already a huge profit. Leng Shiqi held the sword shadow, and the sword shadow immediately sank into his arm. He lifted his sleeve and saw that there was an additional sword imprint on his wrist. As long as he activated it, he would be able to activate the Divine Sword Bright. Leng Shiqi wore the mustard seed bracelet on his wrist to cover the imprint, and then continued to cultivate and recuperate. After all, his injuries could not be healed in a day or two. As such, he stayed in the underworld for more than 10 days until he recovered 80 to 90% of his strength. Leng Shiqi opened his eyes and a few rays of cold light flashed in them. It's time to find the person who leaked my whereabouts. Chapter 647. There were very few people who knew that Leng Shiqi had gone to the Western Desolate Province. He remembered that there were only 7 people present at the time. They were Inspector Yu Ruifeng, his right-hand man Li Hong, Duan Chun, and the other 2 inspectors. Apart from them were Lian Yi and Gao Yi. Among these people, Leng Shiqi eliminated Lian Yi and Yu Ruifeng. There was no need to mention Lian Yi. The enmity between her and Leng Shiqi had long been resolved. Moreover, Leng Shiqi had brought Lian Yi here under Heavenly Sovereign Black Flame's orders. If Heavenly Sovereign Black Flame had killed him first, he wouldn't have needed to spend so much effort. As for Yu Ruifeng, he had no motive. He was Eunuch Gao's man and was on the opposite side of Li Jueqing. It was almost impossible for Li Jueqing to instigate an inspector. Moreover, Leng Shiqi had saved his life. He had also wanted to pass his position to Leng Shiqi. Most importantly, there was no benefit for him to kill Leng Shiqi, so he eliminated him first. Then only Gao Yi and Duan Chun were left. Among these people, the most suspicious ones were Gao Yi and Duan Chun. Gao Yi was Eunuch Gao's favorite adopted son, and Leng Shiqi was Eunuch Gao's personal disciple, as well as his favorite person. Although Leng Shiqi and Gao Yi had only met a few times and didn't seem to have any interactions, they couldn't compare to one conflict. That was who would take over Eunuch Gao's position. Seeing that the Thunderflame dynasty was about to have a change in power, Eunuch Gao's position as one of the 4 great supervisors was most likely going to be removed. So who would take over? At present, other than the deputy supervisors, only Leng Shiqi and Gao Yi had the most hope. Therefore, in Leng Shiqi's opinion, Gao Yi had a motive to kill him. Moreover, they had fought in Xingji Pavilion before, so their relationship was not good. In addition, Duan Chun might have been secretly bribed by Li Jueqing. This Duan Chun was once Leng Shiqi's superior, but because he was jealous of Leng Shiqi's windfall, he secretly caused trouble for him. Later, Leng Shiqi directly replaced Duan Chunbei County's great supervisor position without giving him any face. Duan Chun might hold a grudge because of this, so he secretly sided with Li Jueqing and sold information about the Leng Shiqi. Of course, this was just Leng Shiqi's guess. He didn't have much interaction with the other people, so Gao Yi and Duan Chun were the most likely. Half a month later, Dark Thunder Manor in West Desolation City. There were very few people here because most of the Dark Thunder Guards had been sent out to scout for information. Only Yu Ruifeng and a few others were in the center to control the situation. Especially now that Zhu Lu country, Bei Lu country, and Diyu country's diplomatic missions had entered West Desolation City, Zhu Lu country had been staying in the West Desolation Cities Inn for a few days. These diplomatic missions were naturally received by people, but a lot of people were needed to secretly monitor them. As a result, as long as there were people who could be used, Dark Thunder Manor seemed empty. Yu Ruifeng constantly received information, but what he was most worried about was not this, but Leng Shiqi. Leng Shiqi had left West Desolation Province for the 6 countries of the Western region for more than 2 months. According to the information, the Starfall Dynasty's diplomatic mission was about to enter the country. When all the diplomatic missions arrived, they would go to the imperial capital together. Leng Shiqi should have returned long ago, but there was no news of him until now. He didn't care what Leng Shiqi found out. He was already worried about Leng Shiqi's safety. After all, going deep into the 6 countries of the Western region and involving the Starfall Dynasty was still very dangerous. If Leng Shiqi's identity was exposed, he might be left there. Just as he was worrying, Lian Yi walked in. Yu Ruifeng immediately stood up and cupped his hands. "Miss Lian Yi." Lian Yi smiled faintly. "Lord Yu, you're welcome." Then her smile disappeared. "I just came to ask if Lu Xingji has returned yet?" Yu Ruifeng shook his head. "No, but Miss Lian Yi doesn't need to worry. You and I both know Lu Xingji's ability and strength very well. He won't easily get into trouble." "That's true, but foster father thinks highly of him. If something really happens to him when he sneaks into the 6 countries of the Western region, it will be a loss for the Dark Thunder Guards." "Alas." Yu Ruifeng sighed. "That's true. Unfortunately, my Dark Thunder Guards are all busy, and those who spread information in the 6 countries of the Western region have not found him. Right now no one knows where he is." While the two of them were talking, Yu Ruifeng's eyes suddenly widened, and his figure disappeared in front of Lian Yi. Lian Yi was puzzled at first, but then a huge sound came from outside. Along with the shaking of the ground, waves of terrifying spirit energy fluctuated continuously. Even Lian Yi, who was at the spirit aperture realm, couldn't help but activate her spirit armor to resist. What happened outside? Could it be that the envoys of the 6 countries of the Western region really brought people to cause trouble? Lian Yi exclaimed. She hesitated for a moment, then rushed out. However, when Lian Yi ran to the source of the sound, she was immediately stunned. She actually saw that half of Dark Thunder Manor had been blasted apart. Before she could even approach, she felt waves of Vajra power rushing towards her. It even caused her spirit armor to fluctuate. Just the aftermath was difficult for her, who was at the spirit aperture realm, to resist. Then what kind of expert made a move in the Dark Thunder Manor? Unfortunately, Lian Yi didn't see who did it. She only saw a corpse lying on the ground. There was a huge hole in the chest of the corpse, as if some kind of power had pierced through the heart and killed him. What made Lian Ye's heart jump was that the owner of the corpse was eunuch Gao's adopted son, Gao Yi. Gao Yi was killed? And he was killed in one hit. Gao Yi was an expert at the late stage of the spirit astral realm. How could he be killed in one hit? Could it be that the person who did it was an expert at the unity of heaven and man realm? At this moment, Yu Ruifeng was standing beside Gao Yi's corpse with a gloomy face. Just now, he suddenly felt an extremely powerful spirit energy appear in the Dark Thunder Manor. He immediately felt that something was wrong and rushed over as fast as he could. However, he was still one step too late. He didn't even see the person who did it. He only saw that person emitted a dazzling golden light and disappeared in a red, blue and yellow light. Gao Yi was eunuch Gao's favorite adopted son. He also held an important position in the palace. Now that he had died in the Western Baron County, and in the Dark Thunder Manor at that, Yu Ruifeng, the supervisor, could not escape the blame. While Yu Ruifeng hated Gao Yi, he couldn't help but be surprised by the killer's strength. Although he only saw the person's figure, he could tell that the person was definitely at the spirit astral realm. But Gao Yi was also at the spirit astral realm, the peak of the spirit astral realm. Gao Yi also practiced the cold magic book created by eunuch Gao. His strength was definitely not weak. How could he be killed before he even had time to react? The killer's strength was so strong. "Lord Yu, what happened?" Lian Yi asked in a trembling voice. Someone dared to kill Gao Yi in the Dark Thunder Manor under Yu Ruifeng's nose. That person was really bold and powerful. Yu Ruifeng was about to speak, but there was another commotion outside the Dark Thunder Manor. He frowned. Soon, a Dark Thunder Guard hurried in and shouted, "Lord Yu, Lord Duanchun was suddenly killed." Yu Ruifeng suddenly emitted a fierce aura. "How dare you offend me? You're courting death." Dozens of miles away from the Western Wilderness City, Leng Shiqi took back the spirit fox lotus bow and said to himself, "No matter who betrayed me, I'll just kill them all." Chapter 648. A mysterious expert had killed 2 people in the Dark Thunder Manor. One was the supervisor of the Dark Thunder Guards, and the other was the adopted son of eunuch Gao. Although Yu Ruifeng had sealed off the news, the commotion caused by Leng Shiqi's attack was not small, especially when Duan Chun died in the crowd. Therefore the news slowly spread. At this time, the Western Desolation City was very tense. Ordinary people might not feel much, but the city guards and the Dark Thunder Guards were in a state of panic. They did not dare to be careless in the slightest, for fear that something would happen to the people of the diplomatic mission. In the end, nothing happened to the diplomatic mission, but the Dark Thunder Guards were the ones in trouble. As a result, Yu Ruifeng could not help but suspect that it was the work of a certain diplomatic mission. But on second thought, of the 3 diplomatic groups that had arrived, the Zhulu country and the Beilu country were both vassals of the Thunderblaze dynasty. No matter how bold they were, they wouldn't dare to assassinate the Dark Lightning Guards. Therefore the Great Moon clan was the most suspicious. This was only a suspicion. In Yu Ruifeng's opinion, even if the Great Moon clan did not have good intentions, they would not cause trouble so soon after arriving in the Western Desolation City. Wasn't this too ostentatious? It would be too easy for people to associate it with them. Yu Ruifeng sat in his study. The more he thought about it, the more his head hurt. He could not figure out who did it, nor could he understand why Gao Yi and Duan Chun were killed. The 2 of them did not seem to have any connection. Duan Chun had never even heard of Gao Yi's name. Therefore the 2 of them did not seem to have anything in common. However, the 2 of them were killed at the same time. It was clear that there was some connection. Sigh. Yu Ruifeng sighed deeply. Investigating the diplomatic mission and secretly protecting them had already given him a headache. Now that such a thing had happened, he did not know how to deal with it. Duan Chun's death was sudden, but Yu Ruifeng had someone who could temporarily replace the supervisor. At least it would not delay matters. However, Gao Yi was also dead. How could he explain this to eunuch Gao? Leng Shiqi had also disappeared for a long time. If something happened to him, Yu Ruifeng was afraid that eunuch Gao would directly chop him up with a knife. He had also specially ordered the city to be under martial law. He even personally tracked the assassin's aura, but in the end, it was to no avail. He had no choice but to reassign more people to protect Lian Yi and the several great inspectors, hoping that no more accidents would occur. As for the 3 diplomatic missions that had already arrived, they were all extremely shocked when they heard the news. There was actually someone who dared to kill someone in the Dark Thunder Manor? This was a public slap to the Dark Lightning Guards and the Thunderblaze dynasty's face. Of course they were more or less a little worried. Why didn't you kill them earlier or later? Why did you have to kill them after they had entered the Western Desolated City? Wasn't this turning the suspicion onto them? Therefore Zhulu country's King Gus and the other 2 diplomatic missions were secretly cursing. Meanwhile, the murderer who killed Gao Yi and Duan Chun was hiding in the Western Desolation City, eating and drinking uncomfortably. Leng Shiqi had also been to the Western Wasteland City several times, but he hadn't had the chance to take a good stroll. Here, merchants from the 6 countries of the Western regions were gathered, and there were all kinds of rare treasures and exotic toys. It was indeed very lively. In any case, he had already killed the 2 most suspicious people. In order to avoid arousing suspicion, he purposely waited for a period of time before showing himself again. Since he had nothing to do, he would disguise himself and stroll around the Western Desolation City. When he was tired, he would find an inn to stay and slowly cultivate. Until 10 days later, Leng Shiqi swaggered into the Dark Thunder Manor's main gate. Not long after he walked through the gate, Yu Ruifeng and Lian Yi quickly walked over. Yu Ruifeng smiled from afar and said, "You're finally back." Leng Shiqi cupped his hands and said, "I ran into a little trouble on the way and was delayed for a while. Sorry for making you worry." Soon after, the 3 of them came to Yu Ruifeng's study. Leng Shiqi took out all the information he had gathered in the 6 countries of the Western regions. Yu Ruifeng looked at it with rapt attention for a long time and said, "The information Lord Lu obtained is too precious. What you did alone is enough to match up to several hundred Dark Lightning Guards. No, this is already not something that can be measured by quantity. It can be said that Lord Lu used your own strength to complete more than half of the mission. I admire you, I admire you." He was full of praise for Leng Shiqi. Lian Yi also looked at Leng Shiqi with sparkling eyes. Leng Shiqi said a few words of modesty. Then he looked around casually and asked curiously, "Why didn't I see eunuch Gao Yi?" As soon as he said this, Yu Ruifeng and Lian Ye's expressions froze. Yu Ruifeng told him what had happened 10 days ago in a calm voice. Leng Shiqi immediately stood up with a shocked look. Then he said angrily, "How lawless? Who dares to commit murder openly in the Dark Thunder manner? If I find out who it is, I will skin him alive and pull out his tendons to taste all the punishments in the world." Yu Ruifeng said, "Don't worry. I've also been chasing the assassin these days, but unfortunately I found nothing. It can be seen that the man came prepared. And the assassin's strength is also very strong. Although he is in the gang spirit realm, he can kill Gao Yi instantly. It's really rare." Hearing that Yu Ruifeng didn't find anything, Leng Shiqi was relieved. What he was most worried about these days was that Yu Ruifeng would find some clues. After all, Yu Ruifeng was the inspector, and his investigation ability was absolutely top-notch. Now it seemed that he didn't suspect Leng Shiqi. Leng Shiqi sat down and said, "Now the Western Wilderness City is really troubled. I think the most urgent thing now is to ensure the safety of all the diplomatic missions. As soon as all the diplomatic missions arrive, we will set off for the imperial capital immediately." Yu Ruifeng nodded and said, "I think so too. 2 days ago the diplomatic missions of the Jushur state and the Golden Tribe arrived. Only the people of the Tuoba state and the Starfall dynasty are left. When all the diplomatic missions leave the Western Wilderness Prefecture, the pressure on us will be much less. But I have reported Gao Yi's death to Eunuch Gao, but I haven't received any reply. To be honest, I am also prepared to resign from my position as the inspector." Leng Shiqi knew that Eunuch Gao would definitely suspect him, so he still had to go through Eunuch Gao. He said, "Gao Yi's death is too strange, but it has nothing to do with Lord Yu. Eunuch Gao is a reasonable person, so I don't think he will blame Lord Yu. Actually, it doesn't matter to me whether he blames me or not." Yu Ruifeng said carelessly, "I was planning to resign from my position as the inspector to focus on cultivation. Maybe I will have a chance to make a breakthrough." Leng Shiqi chatted with them for a while, then excused himself. After that, he went into seclusion. Another half a month passed, and the diplomatic missions of the Starfall dynasty and the Tuoba state arrived at the Western Wilderness City. Yu Ruifeng and the city lord of the Western Wilderness City hit it off, and arranged for all the diplomatic missions to set off for the imperial capital as quickly as possible. Of course, these people couldn't use the interdomain transfer formation, so they could only walk. And the speed of the diplomatic missions was very slow, so it would take them about 3 months to reach the imperial capital. Lei Qingjuan's birthday banquet wouldn't be too far away. On this day there were hundreds of different kinds of carriages lined up at the east gate of the Western Wilderness City, and there were also thousands of guards standing guard around these carriages. In places unknown to others, there were also groups of Dark Thunder guards who were secretly scouting and investigating in advance. The 7 diplomatic missions set off for the imperial capital in such a grandiose manner. Chapter 649. The 7 envoys had made arrangements for their journey to the imperial capital. Every time they passed through a prefecture, they would be escorted by local guards and Dark Lightning guards. After they left the Western Baron Prefecture, Yu Ruifeng's mission was considered complete. However, Leng Shiqi's mission was only half completed. Because he had to follow the envoys all the way to the imperial capital, he led a few of his guards as the vanguard. They had to investigate and clear all the hidden dangers a day or two before the envoys. In the past, this kind of task was very tiring. Moreover, the Dark Lightning guards could not maintain a high level of concentration for long periods of time. However, with Leng Shiqi around, it was much simpler. He only needed to use the supercilious eye and walk around a few times. The only thing Leng Shiqi found troublesome was that it took too much time. At this speed, it would take nearly 3 months to reach the imperial capital. Wouldn't it be better to use this time for seclusion? In particular, Leng Shiqi had recently accidentally used the power of the laws of heaven and earth. He had originally planned to go into seclusion to comprehend it. Unfortunately, he had no choice but to continue escorting the envoys for the sake of merit. It was worth mentioning that he had once saved King Gus's life. The two of them had gone through a life-and-death situation together. Therefore, King Gus was very enthusiastic about Leng Shiqi along the way. He even introduced the other important ministers of the 6 nations of the western regions to him. Of course, it wasn't all smooth sailing along the way. Leng Shiqi really did discover some people with bad intentions. However, he was able to uncover these people in advance. As a result, he received praise from many people, including the 6 nations of the western regions and Crown Prince Ying Yuan. 3 months later, the envoys finally arrived at the western gate of the imperial capital. Here, tens of thousands of guards and hundreds of dark lightning guards stood in formation to welcome them. The Thunderfire dynasty had also sent several ministers, including Eunuch Gao. Eunuch Gao saw Leng Shiqi and nodded slightly. Leng Shiqi was able to smoothly bring the envoys to the imperial capital without any accidents. This was a huge contribution. This quest would not have gone so smoothly for anyone else. Only Leng Shiqi, who had Byakugan and Fate, could complete it so easily. Welcoming the diplomatic mission was a very tedious process. These people exchanged greetings at the city gate for a long time. Leng Shiqi directly handed over to Eunuch Gao and prepared to return to Xingji Pavilion to rest. When he brought his subordinates to the inner city, he discovered that there were many spirit cultivators from various sects and powers in the inner city. My lord, all the first-rate forces in the Thunderflame dynasty have a quota to attend the birthday celebration. Although first-rate forces are rare, the empire is a vast land with abundant resources. Right now, 99% of the first-rate forces are gathered in the imperial capital. Even if they can only send one person to participate in the birthday banquet, it's still not a bad idea for them to bring their disciples to see the world. Fei Qing quivered as he spoke. Leng Shiqi agreed with his words. The Thunderflame dynasty had a total of 36 counties, and each county had more or less first-rate forces. If a county had a first-rate sect, then there would be at most 2 or 3 first-rate forces. After all, just a first-rate sect alone would be able to occupy almost half of the county's resources. The rest would not be able to support a few first-rate sections. For example, Donglin County and Muqing County were the same. If a county did not have a first-rate sect, then there would be more first-rate sections. For example, the West Desolate County had 4 first-rate sects and a large number of second-rate sections. The further Leng Shiqi and the others went into the city, the more experts they met. Spirit Astral Realm cultivators could be said to be everywhere, and there were also quite a few Unity of Heaven Realm cultivators. Only during the Emperor's banquet would they have the opportunity to see so many experts. Leng Shiqi returned to Xingji Pavilion and dismissed his subordinates. These few months they had all been tense and should have had a good rest. Even Leng Shiqi was the same. But not long after he rested, Wu Diao came to the door. Wu Diao walked in and cupped his hands with a smile. Congratulations, Brother Xingji, for making a great contribution again. I heard that you came back, so I invited you to a welcome dinner. I wonder if Brother Xingji would like to do me the honor? Leng Shiqi knew that Wu Diao must have something to do with him, so he returned a salute and said, "Then it's better to be courteous than courteous." But not now. Wu Diao suddenly smiled mysteriously and said, "You have to wait until the evening. I also invited 2 people to accompany me. At that time we will congratulate Brother Xingji together." Leng Shiqi laughed secretly. He did not know what Wu Diao was up to. Anyway, he could be idle for a few days, so it was not impossible for him to relax a little. At night, Leng Shiqi finally met the other 2 people. They were Zhuge Puha and Di Chuan. They were more familiar with each other, so after greeting each other, Wu Diao said with shifty eyes, "I say, brothers, today is Brother Xingji's return. We should celebrate. Also, I have to say that Brother Xingji's luck is really amazing. Tonight is the Phoenix Stage Conference that only starts once a year. No matter what, we should go and take a look." Phoenix Stage? Phoenix Stage? What the hell was that? Leng Shiqi's head was full of bumps. He had never heard of these names before. He turned to look. Di Chuan also had a puzzled expression, similar to his, but Zhuge Puha's expression changed. Di Chuan asked, "Brother Wu, Brother Zhuge, what kind of place is Phoenix Stage?" Wu Diao smiled evilly and said, I say, the 2 of you have been in the imperial capital for quite some time, but you still don't know about Phoenix Stage? That is the place that all men yearn for the most, and it is the highest standard in the entire Thunderfire dynasty." Hearing this, Leng Shiqi's eyebrows jumped. He could already guess what Phoenix Stage was. Was Wu Diao planning to bring them to visit a brothel? If the Delta Origi found out about this, he wouldn't know how to explain it, so Leng Shiqi subconsciously wanted to refuse. However, Wu Diao seemed to have predicted his reaction, so he spoke first. "Brother Xingji, don't be in such a hurry to refuse. Phoenix Stage isn't as bad as you think. Those who can enter Phoenix Stage are all high officials and nobles. How could ordinary women catch their eye? That's why the ladies in Phoenix Stage are all good at singing and dancing. Everyone is more interested in singing and dancing than anything else. Especially since tonight is the Phoenix Stage Conference, it has attracted a lot of people. In addition, experts from all over the world have entered the imperial capital recently. This is a good opportunity to gather information. As for what Phoenix Stage is, let me keep you in suspense. Otherwise it will be boring. Zhuge Puha also added, I've been to Phoenix Stage before. It is indeed an elegant place. I am also very interested in this Phoenix Stage. Brother Lu, why don't you come with us? Di Chuan also nodded excitedly. The other three wanted to go, so Leng Shiqi didn't want to dampen their spirits. He could only agree. Chapter 650. While Leng Shiqi and the others were on their way to Mu Link, three people were sitting in a dark room in Dark Thunder Manor. They were Li Juqing, Li Jugu and Fourth Uncle. 3 months ago, when Leng Shiqi and the 7 divisions returned to the capital, they already knew that their assassination had failed again. It was fine that they failed, but Li Juning actually died at the hands of Leng Shiqi. They still couldn't confirm that Li Juning was killed by Leng Shiqi, but it definitely had something to do with him. Ever since Leng Shiqi came to the headquarters of the Dark Thunder Guards, he began to stand out. Li Juqing also tried to suppress him, but in the end he made a great contribution to quelling the rebellion in Shantai County, slapping Li Juqing's face hard. Later, Eunuch Gao sent Leng Shiqi to Ningyang County in order to counterattack. This time he killed Li Zhangtao and took away his money tree. On the way back, Li Juqing sent people to assassinate Leng Shiqi, but Leng Shiqi returned to the capital without anyone knowing. After entering the Heavenly Tomb, Leng Shiqi killed the 2 younger generation brothers of the Li family, cutting off the backbone of the Li family's next generation, causing the 2 sides to fight to the death. As a result, 3 Unity of Heaven Realm cultivators joined forces to kill Leng Shiqi. Unfortunately, they didn't succeed. Instead, they lost a powerful Unity of Heaven Realm cultivator. When Li Juqing found out about this, he couldn't wait to rush to the Western Baron province to kill Leng Shiqi. However, he wasn't crazy. He couldn't do that or else he would be in great danger. At the very least, he would lose his position as one of the 4 great chiefs. At the very least, even the Li family would suffer. This was because Li Juqing was very clear that he and Eunuch Gao were enemies in the Dark Thunder Guards. Eunuch Shintu and Eunuch Hai also didn't have a good relationship with him. Most importantly, the commander of the Dark Thunder Guards, Heavenly Venerable He Yen, already had the intention to weaken the Li family. Once these people seized the opportunity, they would spare no effort to suppress the Li family. In the worst-case scenario, the Li family might be directly destroyed. Therefore, Li Jueqing still resisted the urge to kill Leng Shiqi. However, he could not give up just like that. Since he could not use underhanded methods, he would use other methods. The 3 of them were gathered here to discuss how to deal with the Leng Shiqi head-on. Li Jueqing said coldly, there's actually something else going on at His Majesty's birthday banquet this time. As Eunuch Gao's favorite disciple, Leng Shiqi will definitely attend. When that happens, we'll have a chance to kill him. What opportunity? Li Jugu and Fourth Uncle asked at the same time. After a series of failures and a huge loss to the Li family, even Fourth Uncle felt that Leng Shiqi had to die. Li Jueqing hesitated for a moment before saying, there are only a few people who know about this matter. Fine, there's no harm in telling you first. In fact, His Majesty is planning to select the Crown Prince at this birthday banquet. As soon as he said this, Li Jugu and Fourth Uncle were shocked. The current Emperor Lei Qingjuan's health was deteriorating. It was estimated that he could only last 2 or 3 years at most. Therefore, the struggle between the princes had become more and more intense. Even a few months ago, there was an assassination attempt on the 9th Prince Lei Haoqing. It was also from that incident that the princes began to fight with each other. In the past few months, several princes had either been driven away to their fiefdoms or sought refuge with a powerful prince. Currently, there were only 4 people who were most likely to become the crown prince. They were the eldest Prince Lei Haoyan, the 4th Prince Lei Haoran, the 9th Prince Lei Haoqing, and the 13th Prince Lei Haoyun. The eldest Prince Lei Haoyan had outstanding military achievements and had the support of many generals. He was also a great master in the unity of man and nature realm. The 4th Prince Lei Haoran's mother was the current empress. Although he was not the eldest son, he was still considered legitimate. Many of the court officials were in the empress's faction. Not only were there many masters around him, but there were also many strategists who gave him advice. The 13th Prince Lei Haoyan had only one thing, and that was that he was too similar to Lei Qingjun. Just based on this point alone, he was Lei Qingjuan's most beloved prince. Especially now that Lei Qingjun knew that he didn't have much time left, it wasn't impossible for him to willfully pass the throne to Lei Haoyun before he died. As for Lei Haoqing, he originally belonged to the middle of the line among the princes. It was because he had roped in the support of the Thousand Illusionary Sword sect. During this time, the Thousand Illusionary Sword sect had sent a large number of masters to oversee him. It could be said that he was in the limelight and had the capital to compete with the others. But then again, he was the one who had started this. Moreover, recently all the first-rate and peak sects had gathered in the imperial capital. This meant that the other princes had the same idea. Now, they were vigorously trying to win over the various large sections. The power behind them was skyrocketing. As for who would be able to walk to the end, no one could say for sure. Li Jianghu and fourth uncle were so shocked when they heard that Lei Qingjun was preparing to announce the crown prince at the birthday banquet. However, they were also very confused. What did this have to do with them killing Leng Shiqi? Could it be that he wanted Leng Shiqi to offend one of the princes and then use the prince's power to kill Leng Shiqi? However, Leng Shiqi was not stupid. On the contrary, he was extremely shrewd. He would not easily offend a prince. After all, every prince had the possibility of becoming the emperor in the future. Li Juqing raised his hand and laid down a layer of barrier. He was so cautious in the headquarters of the Dark Thunder Guard and the Li family. It was obvious that what he was about to say next was very important. He said, "His Majesty is planning to open Void Scar Sky and let the princes use Void Scar Sky as a trial to determine the next crown prince." Hearing this, the other two's expressions of shock appeared again. The Void Scar Sky was one of the most valuable secret realms in the Thunderblaze dynasty. For example, the Heavenly Tomb was for experts to comprehend, and the Minor Chaos Paradise was for tempering oneself. As for the Void Scar Sky, it was a genuine secret realm. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth inside was unimaginably abundant, but this was not the most important thing. The most important thing was that this secret realm would not normally open. This was because the Thunderblaze dynasty had planted and cultivated countless treasures of heaven and earth in this secret realm. These treasures were constantly being nourished in the secret realm. It had been 100 years since the last time the Void Scar Sky opened. What kind of quality would the treasures inside be nourished to now? Even if they just went in for a stroll, they would be able to obtain rich treasures and materials. It was simply picking up money. Li Jianghu and fourth uncle, the two Unity of Heaven and Man realm cultivators, were extremely moved when they heard this. They wished they could go in and explore. At the same time, they also roughly understood Li Juqing's intention, which was to kill Leng Shiqi in the Void Scar Sky. Li Juqing said sinisterly, "You guessed right. Although the Void Scar Sky can only accommodate spirit cultivators below the Unity of Heaven and Man realm, I have already arranged for many spirit astral realm experts. Ants can bite an elephant to death. No matter how strong Leng Shiqi is, it is impossible for him to survive the encirclement of so many spirit astral realm experts. However, just in case, I still need you to pay a price." Chapter 651. On the other side, Leng Shiqi had already arrived at the Curtain Pavilion with Wu Diao and the others. This place was very large and the construction was very unique and elegant. If it were not for the beautiful ladies coming and going and the sound of bamboo music everywhere, one would think that this was the residence of some refined expert. The four of them walked into the Curtain Pavilion, and a woman in her 30s or 40s with heavy makeup walked over. Although she was a little old, judging from her appearance, she must have been a rare beauty when she was young. Leng Shiqi, Di Chuan, and Zhuge Puha had all come in their own clothes, but Wu Diao had come in the official uniform of an envoy inspector. This woman immediately welcomed them with a smile. "Guests, please come in." Her voice was slightly hoarse, but it was precisely because of this that it gave off a faint charm. There was a hint of emotion in her eyes, and just a glance was enough to make Di Chuan blush slightly. Wu Diao immediately said casually, "Hurry up and arrange a private room and call over a few ladies. They have to be at least Earth Chief level." The woman's smile stiffened slightly. The ladies in the Curtain Pavilion were also divided into several levels, and among them Heaven Chief and Earth Chief were the most precious. Not just anyone could receive Heaven Chief level ladies. On the contrary, it was extremely difficult to even meet a Heaven Chief. There were even some young masters who would fight to the death for the sake of a certain Heaven Chief. This was a common occurrence in the Curtain Pavilion. As for Earth Chief, although they were one level lower than Heaven Chief, they were still not something that could be directly ordered by ordinary people. They were also the signboards of the Curtain Pavilion. Envoy Inspector Wu Diao's status was not low, but if he were to call over 4 Earth Chief at once, he was still a little unqualified. What's more, with so many powerful cultivators gathered in the imperial capital, the Curtain Pavilion's business had become even more prosperous recently. The resources of Earth Chief were also in short supply. Wu Diao caught sight of the woman's expression, and his expression immediately darkened. Just as he was about to say something, Lung Shiqi directly took out his own command tablet. The command tablet of an envoy of eunuchs. The woman covered her red lips and almost cried out in surprise. Then she smiled and said, "So it's Lord Envoy of Eunuchs. This servant will go and arrange it for you." The woman brought the four of them into an exquisite room, then left for the time being. Sigh, even the identity of the envoy inspector is not useful here. Wu Diao muttered softly. Ever since he became the envoy inspector, it could be said that he had gained a lot of benefits from everything. This was the first time he had hit a wall. Lung Shiqi smiled. Sometimes, identity was really important and it was very convenient to do things. However, he didn't say anything because he noticed something very interesting. One of the walls in this room was actually transparent. Standing here, he could clearly see the scene outside. Not far from them, there was a strangely shaped high platform. It looked like a phoenix dancing in the 9 heavens. Wu Diao explained, Mu Link's private rooms are all special. We can see the outside clearly from the inside, but the outside can't see inside. Lung Shiqi understood. This wasn't anything special. There were many similar things in his previous life. As for that high platform, it's the phoenix stage. We're in for a treat tonight. Wu Diao chuckled. Hearing Wu Diao keep talking about the phoenix stage, Lung Shiqi couldn't help but be curious. He didn't know what this phoenix stage was. Not long after, 4 women with outstanding appearance, temperament and musical talent walked in. Lung Shiqi and the others also had a rare moment of relaxation. More than 2 hours later, the room suddenly darkened. However, no one panicked. Everyone knew that the phoenix stage was about to begin. Lung Shiqi also looked out with rapt attention, only to see a resonant phoenix cry suddenly resounding from the phoenix stage. Following that, the phantoms of phoenixes and phoenixes spread their wings and soared into the air, crisscrossing in midair. It was truly dazzling. Immediately, the phoenix and phoenix phantoms froze in the sky. 2 figures slowly descended from the sky. One of them was a graceful beauty. When everyone saw her, their breathing couldn't help but quicken. Not to mention that this woman's appearance and figure could be called a stunner. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that she was devastatingly beautiful. Just her pair of purple eyes were extremely seductive. Even if one looked at it, one's soul would be hooked. Even the girls in the Curtain Rain Pavilion were stunned. However, there was only one person in the audience who didn't have such a reaction. That person was Lung Shiqi. When he saw the woman, he almost spat out the tea he just drank. That woman was clearly 9 Leave, whom he hadn't seen in a long time. Back then, Lung Shiqi had openly brought 9 Leave to the imperial capital. However, after entering the inner city, 9 Leave had disappeared without a trace. Lung Shiqi didn't stay idle after that. If he wasn't running around, he was in seclusion. So, he didn't know where 9 Leave went or what she was doing. Fortunately, he didn't hear any news of demon beasts. This meant that 9 Leave hadn't been discovered. For Lung Shiqi, this was enough. But he never would have thought that 9 Leave would actually come to the Curtain Rain Pavilion. However, Lung Shiqi thought about it again. This place might be quite suitable for 9 Leave. Legend has it that some demons deliberately came to brothels in order to absorb yang qi. Presumably, 9 Leave was in the Curtain Rain Pavilion because of this. Moreover, with 9 Leave's appearance, she could easily attract young and outstanding men. She could also absorb essence without anyone noticing. It was really a good choice. However, this wasn't a long-term solution. If someone noticed, there was still a chance to find 9 Leave. Lung Shiqi gently rubbed his head. He couldn't control 9 Leave anyway. As long as 9 Leave could protect herself, he was too lazy to care. Today he would just pretend that he didn't see anything. At this time, Wu Diao and the others were a little lost in thought. They didn't notice Lung Shiqi's abnormality. 9 Leave landed on the high platform. She didn't sing or dance. Just a faint smile was enough to charm everyone. At the same time, another figure appeared. From the appearance, this was a great beauty that was not inferior to 9 Leave. The difference was that the other beauty was dressed very plainly, as if she only wore a coat. There was no jewelry on her body. But it was this kind of plain beauty that was even more precious in a place like the Curtain Rain Pavilion. However, Lung Shiqi took a closer look and found that the beauty's chest was flat. He raised his eyebrows and looked at her throat. There was a small bulge there. This was a handsome man with a peerless appearance. Phoenix stage, so that's how it is. Lung Shiqi suddenly understood. What a great phoenix stage. The appearance of the phoenix immediately caused a lot of saliva to be swallowed. Even if these people were rich and had extraordinary status, they couldn't help it when they encountered such a stunning beauty. The handsome man didn't make any extra movements. He just made a seemingly polite gesture and stood with his hands behind his back. When Leng Shiqi saw the gesture, he stood up with a swoosh. Chapter 652. Leng Shiqi's actions immediately woke up Wu Diao and the other two who were still in a daze. They regained their senses and clicked their tongues in wonder. Wu Diao even bluntly said, as expected of the Phoenix stage. Not to mention that flirtatious woman, just that handsome man is enough to make people drool. Unfortunately, I don't have that kind of hobby. He didn't suspect Leng Shiqi's actions. He thought that Leng Shiqi was too shocked. After all, in his impression, Leng Shiqi was a very lecherous person. In reality, the reason Leng Shiqi acted like this was because that handsome man's hand gestures were clearly the code for the Bloodseed plan. This person was the third person who had come to help him. Leng Shiqi frowned slightly. Ink Frost Ghost Man had said that he would send 3 people to help him. When he first arrived in the capital, he had met Sulwan and Feng Shiamo. One of them was his senior martial sister, while the other was the Blood Clothing Pavilion's pavilion master's personal disciple. However, the third person mentioned by Ink Frost Ghost Man had yet to appear. Leng Shiqi had been on the move for a long time, so he had inadvertently forgotten about this matter. Only today did he remember that he had another helper. However, Leng Shiqi felt that it was strange. He had clearly just returned to the capital today, and he had only come to Curtain Link on the spur of the moment. How did Ink Frost Ghost Man know that he would come to Curtain Link? Just as he was feeling puzzled, a scholarly man walked out of Phoenix stage. He first bowed to everyone before saying, "Honored guests, are you all satisfied with this year's Phoenix stage?" "Aha, satisfied, very satisfied." A slightly drunk young man slowly glowed with red light as he shouted. "Not bad. This year's 2 beauties on Phoenix stage are both peerless beauties, rarely seen in my life. What did you say this year? Just tell us directly." The scholarly man chuckled and said, "It's good that everyone is satisfied. The lady on my right is called 9 Leave. It's very simple to become her guest. You just need to take out a high-grade Yao core. Whoever has the most precious Yao cores will naturally have a chance to get close to Miss 9 Leave." As soon as he said this, many people in the crowd were stunned. Every single one of them was filthy rich. If someone were to ask them to take out spirit stones or treasures, every single one of them would be confident enough to do so. But this Miss Julie's condition was actually a Yao core? Actually, Yao cores weren't a very important resource, but the problem was that Yao cores were just too rare. In the entire Starfall continent, only the demonic Miasma mountain range and the northernmost wasteland could be found. Although a part of the demonic Miasma mountain range was within the Thunderblaze dynasty, it was still very far from the imperial capital. The extreme north was located to the north of the Northern Wei Empire. More than 90% of the people in the Thunderfire Empire had never been there in their entire lives, let alone obtain a demonic core. What gave them the biggest headache was that Yao cores were not only rare, but ordinary people wouldn't collect them for no reason. Therefore, there were very few people who could take out Yao cores, and even fewer who could take out high-grade Yao cores. This made many rich young masters stomp their feet in anger. Even if they went to buy Yao cores now, it would be too late. It would be a pity to miss out on this Phoenix stage and miss Miss Jolie. The scholarly man had already expected everyone's reaction. He continued, "The beauty on my left has a single name, Hua. His condition is that whoever can give him the most beautiful flower in the world will be able to win the heart of the flower beauty." The most beautiful flower in the world? Many of the guests were confused. There was still such a strange condition? In the past, the Phoenix stage was basically a competition of wealth. Occasionally, there would be competitions of knowledge and strength. But this year, the requirements of the 2 beauties were really strange. Many of the people present had been hanging around the red light district for a long time. They really did have some rare flowers on them. Immediately, some people took out flowers with strange shapes and different colors. The inside of the stage became magnificent. The next segment was similar to an auction. The guests took out the corresponding items according to the requirements of the 2 beauties. Whoever could win the favor of the beauties would be able to get close to them. Wu Diao sighed, I don't have Yao cores or flowers. They really don't give me a chance." Di Chuan also came back to his senses. He knew that he did not have the qualifications to participate, so he simply drank his wine and watched the show. Zhuge Puha had a thoughtful expression. No one knew what he was thinking. As for Leng Shiqi, he knew best why Julie wanted Yao cores. Julie's nature is really hard to change. Only Yao cores can help her recover her cultivation quickly. For her to be able to think of such a method, it can be said that her brain circuit is very strange. However, Leng Shiqi was most interested in the flower beauty. He carefully stared at Hua Mei's face and figure, and even searched through his own memories, but he couldn't find anyone similar to Hua Mei. This meant that Leng Shiqi had never seen this person before. However, the Ink Frost Phantom had said that the 3 helpers he had sent were related to him in some way. Then where was the connection? Leng Shiqi planned to continue observing. At this time the bidding for Jiuli was going on outside. There were only 5 or 6 competitors and only these few people had high-grade Yao cores. In the end, an elegant young master won at the price of several level 6 Yao cores. Then, under everyone's envious gazes, he walked upstairs with Jiuli. What happened next was more interesting. Although the flower beauty was a man, there were quite a few people interested in him in a place like the imperial capital. Right now, there was a row of guests holding all kinds of flowers in their hands, offering them to the flower beauty. However, the flower beauty did not even spare them a glance, as if looking at them would dirty his eyes. One of them said anxiously, "Flower beauty, this is a level 7 treasure, beautiful water pear flower. Could it be that it's not as good as your eyes?" The flower beauty was not even willing to acknowledge this person, which made him so angry that he stomped his feet. In the end he could only leave angrily. After about a quarter of an hour, all the people who had prepared flowers came one after another, but in the end, not a single one of them was favored by the flower beauty. He did not even spare them a glance. Some people began to feel indignant, feeling that the flower beauty was putting on airs. All of a sudden, fresh flowers appeared everywhere in the curtain rain shrine. What was strange was that these fresh flowers were different in the eyes of different people. What everyone saw was the type that they liked the most. A figure arrived in front of the flower beauty. He used his fingers as a sword and countless petals danced around the flower beauty. In an instant, they formed a huge flower that wrapped around the flower beauty, making him look like a flower fairy. "Does this flower catch the flower beauty's eye?" Leng Shiqi asked calmly. The flower beauty smiled gently. He was clearly a man, but he still gave off a breathtaking feeling. "Young master, please come in." Inside the private room, Wu Diao's jaw almost dropped to the ground when he saw this scene. He said in astonishment, "So brother Xingji likes this." Chapter 653. Above the Phoenix stage there were 2 unique rooms. Leng Shiqi was currently in one of the rooms, and there was a person standing next to him. That person was no longer the peerless flower beauty from before. Instead, he was a masked man wearing the nether blood robe. There was a picture of flowers blooming under the moonlight on the mask. Seeing this mask, Leng Shiqi knew who this person was. He was one of the 9 bloody gown assassins of the Blood Cloak Pavilion, Hua Luiyue. In Leng Shiqi's impression, Hua Luiyue was not only one of the 9 bloody gown assassins, but he also had the strength of the leader of the 9 bloody gown assassins. The only one who could compete with him was Leng Shiqi's chief master, Wuxia. Back then, these 2 were the most outstanding disciples of their generation. Now they had become independent existences and were strong competitors for the next pavilion master. But because of this, Leng Shiqi secretly frowned. Out of the 3 helpers that Ink Frost arranged for him, 2 of them were competitors for the next pavilion master. Although Wu Xiang was not here, Suwan and Leng Shiqi were both Wu Xiang's disciples. The 2 of them could also represent Wu Xiang. This meant that all the successors were gathered in the imperial capital. Leng Shiqi could not help but wonder what Ink Frost was trying to do. From another perspective, if Hua Luiyue really came to help him, it would give Leng Shiqi a lot of confidence. This person who could be called the leader of the 9 bloody gown assassins was definitely much stronger than ordinary unity of heaven and man experts. There were probably not many below Sky Origin Realm who could be his opponent. Especially since Hua Luiyue was an assassin. If he secretly assassinated, how many people could survive? If there was someone that Leng Shiqi wanted to kill the most, it would definitely be Li Jucheng, who had tried to kill him time and time again. But Li Jucheng was one of the 4 great chiefs. Not to mention that there were many experts around him. He himself was at the late stage of unity of heaven and man. Moreover, Li Jucheng had been one of the 4 great chiefs for so many years. He must have many unexpected treasures on him. Killing him was easier said than done. Therefore, even though Li Juecheng was on Leng Shiqi's must-kill list, it would take a long time to kill him. Now Hua Luiyue's appearance gave Leng Shiqi some hope. Disciple greets Lord Hua Luiyue. No matter what Leng Shiqi thought, Hua Luiyue was one of the 9 underworld blood cloak assassins. Her status was much higher than his, so he had to salute her. Hua Luiyue turned her head and said, "You should know why I came to the imperial capital. However, I promised the assistant pavilion head that I would only fight for you once." Leng Shiqi thought that it was rumored that Hua Luiyue was similar to the pavilion head hateful blade. She was a closed-door cultivator. This time he did not know what method the Ink Frost Ghost Man used to get Hua Luiyue to come to the imperial capital. Leng Shiqi was satisfied to be able to fight for him once. Without waiting for him to speak, Hua Luiyue took out a light green petal and said, "I will be staying in Minglan for a while. If there is anything you can contact me through this. In order to not be suspected, you should wait until tomorrow morning before you leave." After she finished speaking, she went to the side and closed her eyes to cultivate. Leng Shiqi touched his nose and sat cross-legged, gradually entering into a state of cultivation. The night passed silently. When Leng Shiqi woke up the next morning, Hua Luiyue was still cultivating and had no intention of seeing him off. Leng Shiqi did not want to be snubbed, so he left. Wu Diao and the others went back last night. The news about him and the flower beauty must have spread soon. Leng Shiqi sighed secretly. Anyway, there were many strange rumors about him now. One more would not be too much. He was too lazy to care. However, before Leng Shiqi left, a purple light flashed in front of his eyes. Immediately, his surroundings changed and he came to a purple fog. Leng Shiqi did not panic because he was familiar with the aura of the purple fog. Sure enough, an enchanting figure walked out. It was Nine Leaf. "I sensed your aura last night. I didn't expect you to be gay at such a young age. You really don't learn well." Nine Leaf teased as soon as he appeared. Naturally, Leng Shiqi could not reveal Hua Luiyue's identity. He could only interrupt. "Senior Nine Leaf's presence in Curtain Link is also a surprise to me. Senior must have gained a lot during this period." Nine Leaf licked her lips and said proudly, "What you said is not very nice, but you are right. My cultivation has recovered to the peak of the 5th rank. After I finish refining the monster pill I got last night, I can advance." Oh. Leng Shiqi was really surprised when he heard this. Nine Leaf had barely been in the imperial city for a year. In such a short time, she had already absorbed the power of the 5th rank to the 6th rank. Leng Shiqi could not help but think to himself, "I wonder how many people she has harmed." However, Leng Shiqi's heart moved. This might be good news for him. He immediately cupped his fist and said, "Then I have to congratulate you first. How long will it take for you to advance this time? It might be inappropriate to continue to stay in the imperial city." Nine Leaf nodded seriously. "This is also why I came to find you. At most half a month, at least 7 or 8 days, I will enter a state of deep sleep. At that time, I will need you to help me preserve my physical body. It will take a long time to advance from the 5th rank to the 6th rank. I estimate that it will take at least 2 years. That is natural." Leng Shiqi smiled, but then he changed the topic. "But I feel that Senior Nine Leaf does not need to go through so much trouble." Nine Leaf's eyelids lifted. "What do you mean?" Leng Shiqi smiled. With a flip of his hand, he took out a perfectly round pill. This pill looked simple and unadorned, but when Nine Leaf saw the pill, his eyes suddenly burst out with 2 purple lights. "What pill is this? Why do I feel that this item will be of great help to my advancement?" Nine Leaf asked in surprise. The pill in Leng Shiqi's hand was actually the intermediate advancement pill he bought from the system store. This was specially made for demonic beasts to advance. It could greatly reduce the time it took to advance. For demonic beasts, advancing was good, but they would fall into a deep sleep during this time, which was also the most dangerous time. Even Nine Leaf, a former 7th rank great demonic beast, did not dare to be careless when she recovered. That was why she came to Leng Shiqi for help. If she had this kind of pill, as long as she had enough, she could even complete her advancement in a day. The allure of the advancement pill was simply too great for her. Leng Shiqi said, "This item is called the advancement pill. It is specially prepared for demonic beasts to advance. I think it should be useful to Senior Nine Leaf." Nine Leaf's eyes turned and the corners of her mouth rose. How can I not know what you are thinking? Tell me, what do you need me to do?" Chapter 654. When Leng Shiqi returned to Xingji Pavilion, a man had been waiting for him for a long time. This man was Eunuch Gao. Knowing that Eunuch Gao was here, Leng Shiqi knew that what should come would come sooner or later. Gao Yi died in Dark Thunder Mansion in Western Wilderness City. Eunuch Gao did not blame Yu Ruifeng, which meant that he began to suspect Leng Shiqi. However, since Leng Shiqi had done it, he was prepared. He walked into the hall calmly and saw Eunuch Gao. At this moment, Eunuch Gao's eyes were closed, and there was no expression on his face. Even his aura was faintly discernible. If it weren't for the fact that he was sitting right in front of Lung Shiqi wouldn't even know that Eunuch Gao was here. He could not help thinking, Eunuch Gao's cultivation seems to have improved again. Master, I pay my respects to you. Lung Shiqi still saluted respectfully on the surface. Eunuch Gao still had his eyes closed. After a short while he said, You killed Gao Yi, right? Lung Shiqi immediately showed a look of surprise and said, Master, I am also very sad that Eunuch Gao Yi died an unnatural death. But his death has nothing to do with me. Why do you say that? At this time Eunuch Gao narrowed his eyes and looked at Lung Shiqi with two turbid eyes. There was no emotion in his eyes, but Lung Shiqi felt a sense of fear. However, Lung Shiqi still looked straight at Eunuch Gao without any fear. I want an explanation. Eunuch Gao said in a hoarse voice. Lung Shiqi thought quickly and raised his head. First of all, when Eunuch Gao Yi died, I was not in Western Wilderness Prefecture, but in the 6 countries of the Western region. In terms of time, it is impossible to kill Gao Yi. Besides, Eunuch Gao Yi was a master at the late stage of Gang Spirit Realm. Although I think my strength is good and I may have a chance to fight him head-on, it is absolutely impossible for me to kill Gao Yi in an instant. He stopped here. He did not say too much or too little. He thought that the more he said, the more mistakes he would make. That was enough for him. Eunuch Gao closed his eyes again. Lung Shiqi could not see any of his emotions, nor could he figure out what he was thinking. However, Lung Shiqi wasn't too worried because what he said just now was the truth. Judging from the time, he was not in Western Desolated City at that time. Of course, it could also be said that he had deliberately hidden himself, but no one had any evidence to prove this point. Moreover, the spiritual technique he used to kill Gao Yi was the Vajra finger. This was something that Lung Shiqi had never used in front of outsiders. It could be said that no one in this world other than Tu Deng would recognize it. The result now was that there was no proof. No matter how suspicious Eunuch Gao was, it was only a suspicion. Lung Shiqi was confident that Eunuch Gao would not make things difficult for him based on this suspicion alone. After Gao Yi died, Lung Shiqi was the most outstanding of the young disciples under Eunuch Gao. If Eunuch Gao made things difficult for Lung Shiqi, it would be the same as cutting off one of his arms. Lung Shiqi believed that Eunuch Gao would make the wisest choice. Sure enough, not long after, Eunuch Gao said, I don't want to look into this matter. Since Gao Yi is dead, then let him be. I will leave the missing power in my hands to you. His intention was none other than to make Lung Shiqi work even harder. Lung Shiqi also secretly breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. This hurdle could be considered to have passed for now. He said, sharing master's burdens is a disciple's responsibility. In that case, there is still a task for me tomorrow. Eunuch Gao took the opportunity to say. Lung Shiqi thought that this task came too quickly. Master, please instruct me. Do you know how many top sects there are in the Thunderfire dynasty? Eunuch Gao suddenly asked a strange question. Lung Shiqi gave it some thought. More than half of the 36 provinces of the Thunderflame dynasty had top sects, and as far as he knew, there were as many as 19 of them. Eunuch Gao nodded. That's right. Do you know which ones are the strongest? Of course, there were differences in strength between the top sections. For example, the Blood Cloak Pavilion was stronger than the Mountain Sea sect. Both of them were stronger than the Thousand Illusionary Sword sect. However, it was hard to say which ones were the strongest. If one looked at the ranking of sects, the strongest was undoubtedly the Sixth Direction spiritual region of the Four Saint spiritual regions. However, the Sixth Direction spiritual region was in a semi-secluded state and rarely had disciples appear. Next would be the 5 extreme sects and the 6 Taoist devil realms. Of the 5 extreme sects, the 10,000 Laws Mysterious sect and the Liuhua Palace were both in the Thunderflame dynasty. The 6 Taoist devil realms only had the Inferno Devil sect. However, why did Eunuch Gao ask this? Just as Lung Shiqi spoke his thoughts, Eunuch Gao asked again, then which of these top sects do you think poses the greatest threat to the Thunderfire dynasty? Eunuch Gao's continuous questions made Lung Shiqi even more confused. However, he knew that Eunuch Gao wouldn't ask questions for no reason. It must have something to do with the next task. From the surface, the 10,000 Laws sect and the Liuhua Palace posed the greatest threat. Lung Shiqi answered. You're only half right. Actually, the Thunderfire dynasty's greatest threat is the 10,000 Laws sect. The 10,000 Laws sect's people will enter the imperial capital the day after tomorrow. When the time comes, you'll welcome them on behalf of me. Eunuch Gao finally said. 10,000 Laws sect. Lung Shiqi thought about this name and quickly found information about it in his mind. The 10,000 Laws sect was one of the 5 extreme sects in the world sect ranking. The sect was very extreme. All the disciples inside were spirit casters. In other words, only spirit casters had the qualifications to join the 10,000 Laws sect. The 10,000 Laws sect had a long history and had a foundation of at least 10,000 years. However, the number of disciples in the sect wasn't many. Every generation would maintain around 500 to 600. After all, spirit casters were very rare. Furthermore, the 10,000 Laws sect didn't accept all spirit casters. They still had to go through layers of screening. It was better to have nothing than to have something substandard. Although the 10,000 Laws sect didn't have many disciples, every disciple that left the mountain was an existence that could hold their own. If it was a top sect, this wasn't what the Thunderfire dynasty was most afraid of. In any case, the Thunderfire dynasty had more than 10 top sects in their territory and they weren't afraid of anyone. The only thing that the Thunderfire dynasty was very afraid of was the 10,000 Laws sect. This was because the deterrence of spirit casters in war was simply too strong. If the 10,000 Laws sect participated in a certain chaos, those few hundred spirit casters would be enough to destroy an entire army. It was rumored that the inheritors of the 10,000 Laws sect had a large number of terrifying spirit skill, especially some combined formations that had the power to destroy heaven and earth. Therefore, the Thunderfire dynasty had always kept a close eye on the 10,000 Laws sect. This time, the 10,000 Laws sect had also sent people to participate in Lei Qingjuan's birthday banquet. However, for some reason they were the last to arrive, even later than the other diplomatic groups. However, the 10,000 Laws sect's weight was stronger than the 6 kingdoms of the western region. Eunuch Gao and several other important figures had to go together to welcome them. This wasn't a difficult matter. Leng Shiqi cupped his hands and said, "This disciple understands." Chapter 655. 2 days later, Leng Shiqi arrived at the gate of the imperial capital with his guards. This time, the number of people who came to greet the mysterious sect was also huge. Sun Tiangan, the commander of the patrol guards, came in person. He was an expert of the Sky Origin realm. Even an expert of such status came to greet them in person. Leng Shiqi guessed that the mysterious sect of 10,000 Methods had sent an expert of the Sky Origin realm. In addition to Sun Tiangan, there was another person who had some relationship with Leng Shiqi. That was Lei Mayan, one of the 4 punishment envoys of the Discipline Commission. She was also the backer of the Delta Origi in the Discipline Commission. If Eunuch Gao was also present, his appearance would be really luxurious. From this, it could be seen that the Thunderfire dynasty attached great importance to the mysterious sect of 10,000 Methods. Not long after, a group of about 10 people appeared in everyone's sight. The leader was a gray-haired old man. His complexion was dark and his expression was serious. What was different was that there were 3 mysterious magic beads floating behind him, giving people an unfathomable feeling. He timely whispered in Leng Shiqi's ear, "Sir, this is the elder of the Law Enforcement Hall of the mysterious sect of 10,000 Methods, Elder Bu. He is an expert of the Sky Origin realm." Leng Shiqi nodded silently. As expected, there was an expert of the Sky Origin realm here. He continued to look behind. Behind Elder Bu there were 2 men and a woman. The 3 of them were young, but each of them had the cultivation of the Gang Spirit realm. They must be the most outstanding disciples of the mysterious sect of 10,000 Methods. However, Leng Shiqi's attention was immediately attracted by the girl. This girl could not be considered a beauty, but she was very sweet. Especially when she smiled, it was even more amiable and lovely. She was very lovable. Of course, Leng Shiqi was not attracted by this. More importantly, he felt a trace of a familiar aura from this girl. However, he could not recall what aura it was. This made him frown unconsciously. He turned around and asked He Fei-Chin behind him, "Do you recognize the girl walking in the second row?" He Fei-Chin revealed a smile of understanding and secretly gave Leng Shiqi a thumbs up. His lord was no longer satisfied with the beauties of the imperial capital and had even taken a fancy to the disciples of the 10,000 Laws wonderful sect. He said softly, "My lord, that young girl is called Meng Tiantian. She is an outstanding talent among the younger generation of disciples of the 10,000 Laws wonderful sect. It was said that she had only joined the mysterious 10,000 Arts sect about 3 years ago. Since then her cultivation had improved by leaps and bounds. Her comprehension of spirit arts and illusion arts was also extremely high. She could easily learn many obscure secret arts passed down from ancient times. She shone brilliantly in the 10,000 Laws Mystic Sect's sect competition 2 months ago, consecutively defeating many disciples who had cultivated for a longer time than her, becoming the head seat of the current generation of disciples in one fell swoop. Moreover, she was also accepted as a direct disciple by the Myriad Law sect master, Myriad Law Spirit Senior, who had not come out of seclusion for a long time. She was also given a separate cultivation paradise. It could be said that she was in the limelight. This time, she must have come to the imperial capital because the 10,000 Laws wonderful sect wanted her to come out and gain experience. Meng Tian. Lung Shiqi repeatedly muttered the young girl's name. He was certain that he had never seen Meng Tian before. Even the supercilious eyes did not record her spiritual aura. There was no mistake about this. However, Meng Tian gave him a very strange feeling. It was as if there was some kind of unfathomable relationship between them. Just as Lung Shiqi was thinking, the people of the 10,000 Laws wonderful sect had already arrived in front of him. Patrol Commander Sun Tiangan and Punishment Envoy Lei Mian both came forward to welcome them. Lung Shiqi followed behind them. Although he came as a representative of Eunuch Gao, his status was still that of an inner supervisor, so he could only follow behind. Sun Tiangan smiled at Elder Bu of the 10,000 Laws wonderful sect and said, "Elder Bu, it must have been hard for you to come from afar." Elder Bu also put on a fake smile and said, "It is an honor to be able to attend His Majesty's birthday banquet." These two Sky Origin stage experts didn't seem to be very good with words. However, at their level there was no need to waste words. The two of them only said these two sentences and walked into the inner city of the imperial capital. The process was simple and smooth. Lung Shiqi was happy to see this. Now that this task was over, he could go back. However, when Meng Tian walked past Lung Shiqi, she suddenly turned her head and glanced at Lung Shiqi. To others she was just looking around curiously, but Lung Shiqi's body suddenly stopped. Immediately his face turned pale. Layers of cold sweat covered his entire body with a schwa sound. Immediately after, a stream of blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. Yifeichen was the closest to Lung Shiqi. He immediately noticed his abnormality and hurriedly shouted, "My lord, what happened to you?" Lung Shiqi's body trembled again. He suddenly began to pant violently, as if someone was strangling him to death. His eyes suddenly shrank. In that moment he was attacked by dozens of illusions at the same time. Moreover, so many illusions actually combined to form a huge illusion array. In an instant he was trapped in the illusion array. Although it seemed like only 1 or 2 breaths of time had passed, to Lung Shiqi, he had experienced a fierce battle that wasn't inferior to fighting against someone in the unity of heaven and man stage. If he hadn't already condensed a primordial spirit, he would have been trapped in the illusion array forever and become an idiot for life. Now that Lung Shiqi was awake, he was still scared. He was the clearest about his mental strength. He was certain that his mental strength was not weaker than a spirit caster in the unity of heaven and man stage. Even so, he was still pulled into dozens of illusions. Could it be that Elder Bu, a Sky Yuan stage spirit caster, was the only one who could do this? But why would Elder Bu, a Sky Yuan stage spirit caster, attack him? He didn't have any enmity with the mysterious 10,000 Arts sect. Today was the first time they had met. Why would they do this? At this time Elder Bu really did stop. He first looked at Lung Shiqi, then at Meng Tian. Elder Bu's face immediately tensed up and said, "Nonsense. If this young man's mental strength wasn't so strong, something would have happened. When we return, I will definitely punish you." His words sounded very stiff, but there was no hint of blame in them. He was just saying it. Meng Tian stuck out her tongue and giggled, "I saw that his mental strength wasn't bad, so I tested him. Don't mind it." Everyone else didn't understand what was going on, but Lung Shiqi suddenly looked at Meng Tian in shock. The one who attacked was Meng Tian. How was this possible? Lung Shiqi found it hard to believe. Meng Tian's cultivation was the same as his. Even if Meng Tian was a genius at cultivating spirit spells, she shouldn't have the mental strength of a Sky Yuan stage spirit caster. Moreover, why would Meng Tian do this? Was it really just for fun? Lung Shiqi wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and said indifferently, "It's fine." After saying that, he left with Yifeichen and the others. No one noticed that he left early. After all, he was the victim. Lung Shiqi was in a hurry to go back because he wanted to cultivate immediately. Meng Tian's actions didn't have a motive. Her appearance made Lung Shiqi even more convinced that there was always someone better than him. If it was a life-and-death battle, he would have died long ago. Lung Shiqi was confident that he had the strength to fight against someone in the unity of heaven and man stage. However, today he met Meng Tian who could kill him instantly. This gave him a lot of pressure. However, he didn't notice that the illusion character in his spirit sea was blooming with 5 colors. Chapter 656. After returning to the Xingji Pavilion, Leng Shiqi went straight into the secret cultivation room and announced that he was going into seclusion. He did not even care about the position of deputy manager that eunuch Gao had promised him. There were still 7 days until Lei Qingjuan's birthday banquet. After the people from the 10,000 Law sect arrived, all the factions and diplomatic groups that were participating in the banquet had already arrived. Unknowingly, a piece of news had spread in the imperial capital. It was that His Majesty was preparing to appoint a crown prince at the banquet. Whichever prince passed the Void Scar Sky's trial would obtain the crown prince's position. There was also news that when the Void Scar Sky opened, the various sects that came to celebrate could also enter. As for the number of people, it would be the same as the number of people attending the banquet. First-rate sects would only have 1 spot, while the top sects would have 3. No one knew who spread this news, but it seemed that in a single night, everyone with some status had received this news. They all tacitly kept their mouths shut. And from this moment on, the imperial capital began to surge with undercurrents. Especially the few princes that had the most hope of obtaining the throne. They all began to vigorously contact and rope in people from the various sections. One must know that the Void Scar Sky only allowed spirit cultivators of the spirit astral realm to enter. And those who could attend Lei Qingjuan's birthday banquet were either the upper echelons of the sect or the most outstanding disciples. No matter which one it was, their strength would definitely be at the top of their peers. As long as they could rope in these people, they would be able to increase their strength at the fastest speed. For example, the first Prince Lei Haoyan, the 4th Prince Lei Haoran, and the 13th Prince Lei Haoyan were initially disdainful of Lei Haoqing. But when Lei Haoqing received the support of experts from the Thousand Illusion Sword sect, he could vaguely compete with the 3 of them. It could be seen that cooperating with spirit cultivators was a shortcut to increasing one's strength. Furthermore, the strongest sects in the world were all gathered in the imperial capital. The pavilion closest to the water enjoyed the moonlight first. Whoever snatched it first would get it. And from that day onwards, the princes had several conflicts in order to obtain the support of their respective sections. Each conflict was more intense than the last, to the point that they had even injured each other. In addition, there was some enmity between the spirit cultivator sections. It was even more so for the sects that were located in the same province. Therefore, in just a day or two, there were already several intense battles between spirit cultivator sects in the inner city. The patrol guards wanted to interfere, but those sects were backed by princes and princes with high status and power. The patrol guards couldn't do anything about it. However, they could not allow these people to cause trouble. After all, there were still the divisions of the Starfall dynasty, Northern Wei dynasty, and the 6 nations of the western region present. If they did that, wouldn't they become a laughing stock? The patrol guards had no choice but to report this matter to their superiors. However, when the matter reached their superiors, there was no news. The patrolling guards were stunned. From the looks of it, the higher-ups were going to let the princes and the spirit cultivator sects go? Left with no choice, the patrol guards could only go through the motions whenever something happened. In addition to patrolling, this kind of thing also had a part of the responsibility of the Dark Thunder Guards. The patrolling guards didn't care on the surface, but the Dark Thunder Guards still had to investigate in the dark. If it was just a fight between the princes, they wouldn't care. However, if someone used this opportunity to stir up trouble, then don't blame the Dark Thunder Guards for being impolite. And Leng Shiqi didn't participate in these matters. He was still in closed-door cultivation. It was a pity that he guessed that he had only been in closed-door cultivation for 6 days when someone knocked on the door of the secret room. He Fei Chen stood outside the secret room with a strange expression on his face. He was holding a square box in his hand. It was unknown what was inside, but it made him feel like he was holding a hot potato. Leng Shiqi pushed open the door of the secret room and asked, "What's wrong?" There were still 2 days before the birthday banquet. He Fei Chen must have something important to call him in advance. He Fei Chen held up the square box in his hand and said with a strange expression, "Sir, this item was brought over by Steward Gao." "What is this?" Leng Shiqi saw that He Fei Chen's expression was a little strange and asked, "This? Sir, you should take a look at it yourself." He Fei Chen opened his mouth but changed it at the last moment. Leng Shiqi picked up the box and opened the lid to take a look. Inside was an official seal the size of half a palm. He picked up the seal. This thing was silver gray in color, and at the very bottom, there were the words Deputy General Manager's Seal. This thing was the official seal that symbolized the authority of the Dark Thunder Guard's deputy steward. Leng Shiqi's eyes suddenly moved. This was the item that he had obtained after sneaking into the 6 western countries alone and being intercepted by Li Juning. However, Leng Shiqi's heart didn't fluctuate too much because he also understood Eunuch Gao's meaning. A few days ago he explained the matter of Gao Yi to Eunuch Gao. Eunuch Gao could only say that he didn't have any evidence of Leng Shiqi and didn't mention it for the time being. But this didn't mean that Eunuch Gao would continue to let Leng Shiqi go. Although Eunuch Gao kept his promise and gave Leng Shiqi the identity of deputy steward, Leng Shiqi only got this official seal. According to common sense, the position of deputy steward was not a small matter in the Dark Thunder Guard's headquarters. No matter what, there should be a ceremony or something. At the same time as the deputy steward, he also had a lot of power. For example, he could connect all the affairs and intelligence of a certain state. If there was no Gao Yi, Leng Shiqi should have taken over all the affairs reported by Ningyan County. In addition, the deputy steward had at least several imperial censors under him that could be mobilized. Then the War Thunder Guards would have more guards. It could be said that the power controlled by Leng Shiqi would soar several times in an instant. But now, he had nothing. He only had the identity of deputy steward, and the power in his hands didn't change at all. Leng Shiqi didn't feel much of a ripple in his heart. Before this, he had already expected Eunuch Gao to make things difficult for him. It could also be considered a warning to him. But he didn't expect Eunuch Gao to be so ruthless this time and directly make him a commander without an army. This also proved that Eunuch Gao was indeed very suspicious of Leng Shiqi. He also secretly said that it was fortunate that he didn't tell Eunuch Gao that he was intercepted by Li Juning. Otherwise, if Eunuch Gao knew that he could even kill Li Juning, then naturally he could also kill Gao Yi. Since things had reached this point, Leng Shiqi was just going with the flow. Anyway, as long as he had the identity of deputy steward, it was equivalent to having the qualifications to become one of the 4 stewards. Compared to the power of deputy steward, this was what Leng Shiqi valued the most. Leng Shiqi waved his hand to let He Fei Chen leave. He narrowed his eyes slightly and all kinds of things flashed through his mind. Blood Clothing Pavilion, Zhu Lugua, and Dark Thunder Guards. For a moment, he put away the official seal of deputy steward, and a light called ambition flashed in his eyes. It's time to start planning for myself. Chapter 657. 2 days later, the birthday banquet that would affect the entire Thunderfire dynasty and even the entire Starfall continent finally began. The various nobles of the Thunderfire dynasty, the 8 envoys from the Starfall dynasty, Northern Wei dynasty, and the experts from the various sects entered the palace one after another. Leng Shiqi followed behind Eunuch Gao. As one of the 4 great generals, Eunuch Gao could only bring one person in. Shintuzhen also brought Wu Diao, Di Chuan, Zhugapuha, and Delta Origi as well. This was the first time Leng Shiqi had officially entered the Thunderfire dynasty's palace. As far as the eye could see, this place was not very luxurious, but rather grand and majestic. Lei Qingjuan's birthday banquet started at noon, and the location was in the palace's courtyard. When Leng Shiqi and the others arrived, the princes had already arrived. Among the many princes present, only the first prince, Lei Haoyin, was dressed in martial attire, looking mighty and domineering. The 4th prince, Lei Haoren, held a folding fan in his hand, looking a little feminine. The 13th prince, Lei Haoyun, had a smile on his face, looking very warm. As for Lei Haoqing, who had been assassinated by Leng Shiqi before, his face was gloomy, and he was probably not in a good mood. In the center of them was a huge dragon throne, which was the throne that every prince yearned for. Along the way, Eunuch Gao and the others did not say a word, appearing very quiet. Leng Shiqi also felt that this birthday banquet was definitely not so simple, and that something was going to happen. In the past 2 days, he had also heard about the matter of the Crown Prince and the opening of Void Scar Sky. When he first received the news, he thought that it might have been deliberately released by Lei Qingjun. This kind of extremely secretive news, to be able to know about it in advance, one had to be at least at the level of the 4 great generals. However, these people were all shrewd people, and it was impossible for them to casually mention this matter to outsiders, and even more impossible for the news to spread in such a short period of time. Furthermore, the princes had been causing more and more trouble in the past few days, so how could Lei Qingjun not know? He was just letting them go, but Leng Shiqi could not guess what his goal was, but it should be revealed today. Then he looked at the group of people from the Spirit Cultivator sect. Only a little more than 100 sects had come to participate in the birthday banquet. Among them, only one person from the first-rate sex could enter, and 3 people from the top sex could enter. There were more than 200 people in total, but the weakest among them was at Gang's spirit realm. Among them, there were no less than 30 to 40 people who had achieved one with the heavens, and a few of them were sky origin stage cultivators. These people sat together. Although they couldn't release their cultivation, the aura of spiritual power they unintentionally released made it difficult for ordinary people to approach them. Therefore, the eunuchs and palace maids who received them were all carefully selected. Even the weakest of them had to be at the spirit transformation realm to be able to move around in this group of people. Among these people, Leng Shiqi cared about 2 people the most. One of them was naturally Meng Tiantian from the 10,000 Laws Wondrous sect. A few days ago, Meng Tiantian had caused him to fall into dozens of illusions with a single glance, causing him to be injured. Leng Shiqi was not only afraid of Meng Tiantian, but also very curious about her. He had specially asked people to collect detailed information about Meng Tiantian before, only to find that Meng Tiantian had broken through all the way from the spirit transformation realm to the Gang spirit realm in just 3 or 4 years. This cultivation speed was much faster than that of Delta Origi. Leng Shiqi's cultivation speed was similar to Meng Tiantian's, but his cultivation speed was so fast that he didn't know how many cheats he had used to get it, and he had exchanged his life for it again and again. What about Meng Tiantian? According to the information, since she joined the 10,000 Laws Wondrous sect, she had almost never left the sect, and only went out to gain experience once or twice. Since she could have such a terrifying cultivation speed, her cultivation talent must belong to the god level. Coupled with the tens of thousands of years of foundation of the 10,000 Laws Wondrous sect, it was not impossible. If it was just cultivation, Leng Shiqi was not particularly surprised. What surprised him most was Meng Tiantian's strength. Especially her control of illusion. She could be said to be invincible in the same realm. No, this was no longer invincible in the same realm. Leng Shiqi estimated that Meng Tiantian definitely had the strength to kill a spirit cultivator of the unity of heaven and man stage. Therefore he was very concerned about Meng Tiantian. As for the other person, Leng Shiqi was a little surprised. He had met that person once before. That was one of the 9 Netherworld Blood Cloak assassins he had met in the Bloodkill Hall after coming out of the Blood Mist Island, Leng Yu. At that time, Leng Yu was prepared to accept Leng Shiqi as a disciple, but in the end he was snatched away by Wuxia. Leng Shiqi did not expect Leng Yu to be here. Although the Blood Clothing Pavilion was located in the Thunder Flame Dynasty, in his impression, the Blood Clothing Pavilion would not participate in this kind of activity. This time they actually sent someone. Perhaps this was the change that the Blood Clothing Pavilion wanted to make. As one of the 9 Netherworld Blood Cloak assassins of the Blood Clothing Pavilion, Leng Yu's popularity was not very good. At this moment he was sitting alone in the corner. In fact, with his strength and status, even if he sat in the most central seats, there would be no objections. But who asked him to be a member of the Blood Clothing Pavilion? Many of the spirit cultivator sects had died in the hands of the Blood Clothing Pavilion. Although they all tacitly agreed that they needed this hidden sword, it did not mean that they did not resent the Blood Clothing Pavilion. Now that they saw Leng Yu face to face, it was already very good that they could sit here peacefully. The people present came from all over the place. Other than the officials and ministers who were already acquainted with each other and were more talkative, the others were more silent and seemed to have a lot on their minds. After half an hour, the palace gates closed and a royal palanquin slowly came over. It was the royal palanquin of the Thunder Flame Dynasty's emperor, Lei Qingjun. Everyone stood up to welcome him. "Welcome, your majesty. Long live, long live, long live." Some of these people knelt down while some only bowed. After all, not everyone was a servant of the Thunder Flame Dynasty. Lei Qingjun walked out with the support of the head steward, Eunuch Du. This was the first time Leng Shiqi saw Lei Qingjun. His face looked very old and there was a sickly look that could not be concealed. Only his eyes were as sharp as an eagle's, causing people to not dare to look directly at him. He was actually not very old. If he was in an ordinary family he would be quite old. But this was a world of spirit cultivators, and he was the emperor of one of the 3 great dynasties. What kind of treasures could he not obtain? So even if he did not have any talent for cultivation, it was not a problem for him to live for more than 100 years. In fact, what caused him to be powerless was that his mind was too exhausted. In the eyes of others, Lei Qingjun was a conservative ruler who did not establish a country in his life. But in his heart, he did not want to be a mediocre ruler who would not be remembered by future generations. That was why he worked so hard. Lei Qingjun sat on the dragon throne and said a simple sentence. Today is my birthday banquet. But I only want to say one thing, and that is to establish a crown prince. Chapter 658. Most of the people present had known about this long ago, but they still revealed a surprised expression. After all, this was Lei Qingjun's birthday banquet. Not mentioning the birthday banquet but going straight to the main topic, wasn't it a little too fast? The princes all clenched their fists. Their fates would change greatly today. Some might even be able to ascend to the throne and become the person in charge of the three dynasties. Of course, they might also become the first target of the new emperor's purge. They would not be able to escape death. This birthday banquet not only determined their fates, but also their lives. Lei Qingjun did not care about the reactions of the crowd. He continued, "Today I will open the Void Scar Sky. The Thunderfire Pearl, the heirloom of the Thunderfire dynasty, is inside. Whoever finds it will be qualified to inherit the throne. In addition, the Dark Thunder Guards, Discipline Commission, Patrol Guards, Dukes, Marquises, the military and Spirit Cultivator sects can all enter. However, there is a limit to the number of people who can enter, and the highest cultivation can only be at the Spirit Astral Realm. The Void Scar Sky has not been opened for more than 100 years. What opportunities you can find inside is up to you." Everyone's face lit up with joy. They said in unison, "Thank you, Your Majesty." After Lei Qingjun said these few words, he appeared to be much more tired. He half reclined on the dragon throne and just looked at everyone. Among everyone, only the envoys of the Starfall dynasty had nothing to do with the matter of the crown prince. They just wanted to watch the show. Suddenly, a person appeared beside Lei Qingjun. That person was dressed in a yellow robe and had a solemn face. From his appearance he looked very similar to Lei Qingjun. As soon as this person appeared, many people exclaimed. It seemed that some people knew his identity but most people did not know him. Leng Shiqi was one of them. He transmitted his voice to Eunuch Gao. "Master, who is this? I see that His Majesty is quite respectful to him." Eunuch Gao was also surprised. He said, "This person is His Majesty's twin brother, the Shoddy Prince. When His Majesty ascended the throne, King Zhuozhen was the one who contributed the most. In fact, many people thought that King Zhuozhen would be the next emperor. However, he eventually gave the throne to His Majesty and entered the Imperial Worship Hall. The Imperial Hall of Worship is managed by the humble prince. He is a Sky Origin Stage cultivator, but he hasn't shown up for decades. I didn't expect that His Majesty would ask him to come out." Leng Shiqi nodded in understanding. Even the person in charge of the Imperial Hall of Worship had come out. This birthday banquet was indeed going to be a big event. He did not believe that Lei Qingjun was only here to select the crown prince. There must be some other purpose. Eunuch Gao continued, "The Dark Thunder Guards only have one slot to enter Void Scar Sky. I'll count you in." "Thank you, Master." Leng Shiqi thanked Eunuch Gao. At the same time he understood Eunuch Gao's intentions. A few days ago, Eunuch Gao had made him a deputy general manager with no real authority. Now Eunuch Gao had allowed him to enter Void Scar Sky. It was nothing more than a slap in the face and a sweet date. King Zhuozhen opened his mouth. His voice sounded very deep. "Those who enter Void Scar Sky, please come forward." Eunuch Du said, "Each prince can bring a maximum of 10 people. The same goes for the Dark Thunder Guards, Discipline Division and Patrol Guards. The Duke's Mansion and the General's Mansion will each send one person. The first-rate sects will send one person, and the top sects will send 3 people." Instantly there was some noise from the crowd. Based on this, there were only about 200 people who could enter Void Scar Sky. This was because many of the Spirit Cultivator sects had already submitted to the princes. If they entered as the prince's retainers, then they did not have the qualifications to enter. Leng Shiqi also walked forward. Delta Origi stood not far from him. The two of them looked at each other. In that instant they reached a tacit agreement. However, to Leng Shiqi's surprise, Leng Yu of the Blood Clothing Pavilion also stood up. He was a great master of the unity of heaven and man realm. He could not enter Void Scar Sky. Leng Yu's action also attracted many people's attention. However, to everyone's surprise, 2 clouds of black fog suddenly rose from both sides of Leng Yu. Then 2 figures walked out of it. Both of them were wearing the golden-striped blood clothing of the Blood Clothing Pavilion. Obviously, they were golden-striped blood clothing assassins of the Spirit Gang realm. Both of them were wearing masks. One of them had a sparkling jade tree engraved on his mask, while the other's was a shadow. For the people present, golden-striped blood-clothing assassins were not rare. What shocked them was, how did these two people appear? Don't make a fuss. Elder Bu of the wonderful sect said, these two people have been here since the beginning. It's just that some mediocre people did not notice them. The blood-clothing pavilion's concealment technique is indeed extraordinary. As soon as he said that, many people's faces turned red. However, Elder Bu was a master of the Sky Origin realm, and the wonderful sect was one of the most powerful sects in the Thunder Flame dynasty. No one dared to confront him, so they could only swallow their anger. Lung Shiqi was also shocked when he saw the two people who suddenly appeared. Others might not know them, but he definitely knew the Delta Origi. They were Yushu and Meng Ming. Lung Shiqi did not expect that they had already reached the Spirit Gang realm. He clearly remembered that the last time he saw Meng Ming, he had just broken through the Spirit Aperture realm. They must have had some adventures recently. The reason why Lung Shiqi did not notice them at first was that there were too many people here. He did not activate the supercilious eyes, so he did not notice that they were hiding. This was really a great deterrent, but it would make the blood-clothing pavilion more important in the hearts of many sects. Unexpectedly, the four people who left the Blood Fog Island together would reunite at Lei Qingjuan's birthday banquet. According to the hidden rules of the sects, the blood-clothing pavilion was not allowed to participate in this kind of secret realm competition. At first, some people expressed their dissatisfaction, but the emperor of the Thunder Flame dynasty, Lei Qingjun, did not care. The humble king did not refuse, so others could not say anything. After all, the Space Scar Sky was the secret realm of the Thunder Flame dynasty. He could let whoever he wanted in and no one else could stop him. In Lung Shiqi's view, the blood-clothing pavilion was just testing the waters this time. As long as there was a precedent, it would not be so difficult to accept in the future. The humble king did not care about this small disturbance. He made a seal with his hands, and spots of golden light appeared in front of him, forming a huge gate. Then he waved his hand, and hundreds of spots flew out and landed on everyone who wanted to enter the Space Scar Sky. This is your life plate. If you die in the Space Scar Sky, the outside world will know, he explained. Hearing this, everyone's heart sank. The humble king meant that they could kill people in the Space Scar Sky. But this was Lei Qingjuan's birthday banquet. How could they kill people at the emperor's birthday banquet? What was Lei Qingjun trying to do? This question lingered in everyone's minds. The attitude of the Starfall dynasty's envoys, who were originally watching a show, began to change. The Space Scar Sky will only be open for 3 days. Everything will be clear in 3 days. Everyone go in. As soon as he finished speaking, the golden gate slowly opened. In an instant, golden light shone, enveloping everyone in front of the gate. In less than a breath's time, the golden light disappeared. At the same time, the 200 or so spirit cultivators disappeared as well. Chapter 659. When Lung Shiqi opened his eyes, the first thing he felt was the spiritual energy of heaven and earth surging towards him. From what he could tell, it was at least 10 times stronger than the outside world. Even if he did nothing, cultivating here for 3 days would not be a waste. Lung Shiqi looked around, and all he could see were lush forests and rolling hills. He looked up from a high vantage point, and all he could see was the same. The strangest thing was that there was a crack in the sky that stretched all the way to the horizon. It looked like a broken mirror. He muttered to himself, "Legend has it that Air Scar Sky is about half the size of a province. With only 200 people here, it's not easy to even meet others, let alone find the heavenly Thunderfire Pearl." Lung Shiqi did not forget that the princes were most interested in the heavenly Thunderfire Pearl. However, Lei Qingjun had only said that the heavenly Thunderfire Pearl was in Air Scar Sky. Looking for a pearl in such a large secret realm was like looking for a needle in a haystack. However, Lung Shiqi did not mind. He had only come here to reap some benefits. The heavenly Thunderfire Pearl had nothing to do with him. He then opened the system map. After the system had been upgraded, the system map's functions had become more powerful. Not only could it show all the landforms of Air Scar Sky, but it could also show places with abnormal spiritual energy. These places either had heaven and earth treasures or they were dangerous. In order to ensure his safety, Lung Shiqi even tried to use the Fate skill and the Underworld. He found that both of them could be used in Air Scar Sky. This made him feel relieved. As long as he could use the Fate skill and enter the Underworld, he would be invincible. After being ambushed by Li Juning and Meng Tiantian's appearance, Lung Shiqi had become more cautious. However, he did not enter Air Scar Sky to fight with others. He was here to search for treasures. Lung Shiqi opened his pet space. A pink pig jumped out. It was the four-legged metal-swallowing beast. After being fed by the Leng Shiqi for a long time, the four-legged metal-swallowing beast was already a rank 5 monster beast. It could detect treasures within a radius of 100 miles, and the highest it could detect was rank 6 materials. Ever since he had obtained this beast, he hadn't had the chance to use it. Now it finally came in handy. Although there were many natural treasures in Void Scar Sky, it was impossible for them to be found everywhere. With this four-legged metal-swallowing beast, he could go on a rampage and make a fortune. That was good. Leng Shiqi picked up the four-legged metal-swallowing beast and said, "Let's see if there are any treasures nearby." The little beast twitched its nose as if it was smelling something. Then it actually spoke in human language, "Master, there's something good 50 miles north." Leng Shiqi smiled with satisfaction. He found the right direction according to the system map, and with a light step he was 2 miles away. During the time when he returned to the imperial capital and was in seclusion in Xingji Pavilion, he didn't deliberately deduce any spiritual skills. He spent all his time comprehending the state when he killed Li Juning. Now, although he was far from that level, he found that he had an inexplicable sense of intimacy with the earth. He seemed to be able to control the power of the earth invisibly. For example, he didn't use any spiritual skills just now, but the effect he achieved was comparable to a rank 6 body movement spiritual skill. With such speed, Leng Shiqi arrived 50 miles away in a moment. There was a deep cave here. Leng Shiqi opened his eyes and immediately saw a huge breath in it. And judging from the size of the breath's owner, it seemed to be a snake-shaped monster. And it was a rank 5 monster comparable to a master of Gang Spirit Realm. There are still monsters in Void Scar Sky? It must have been deliberately thrown in by the Thunder Flame dynasty to raise them. Leng Shiqi thought to himself. Then he strode into the cave. Sure enough, it didn't take long before the snake-shaped monster rushed straight at him. In terms of speed, it was far beyond the ordinary Gang Spirit Realm. However, this kind of speed was not enough in front of Leng Shiqi. With a thought, a faint yellow light flashed, and the demonic beast was hit by an invisible force and was instantly pressed to the ground. Leng Shiqi saw clearly that it was a green giant python. At this moment, the giant python was pressed down by gravity. Even if it struggled hard, it could only twist its body slightly. Since there is a rank 5 monster guarding here, the treasures in this cave should be of high quality, including you. You are also a good material. Leng Shiqi said lightly. Then a light bloomed behind his head. A mini light golden sword shadow appeared and shot into the giant python's head in a flash. Then the look in the giant python's eyes quickly disappeared, and even its vitality disappeared. After Leng Shiqi suffered from the backfire of using the law of heaven and earth and was sneak attacked by Meng Tiantian, his spiritual strength had improved a lot. He was now able to condense the sword of primordial spirit. Generally speaking, only spiritual casters in the middle and late stages of oneness of heaven and men could have such strong spiritual strength. The giant python died just like that. Thinking back to when Leng Shiqi was in the demonic Miasma mountain range, a rank 3 demonic beast almost took his life. But now he could casually kill a rank 5 demonic beast. But he didn't feel anything in his heart, as if he had just done a very ordinary thing. He put away the giant python's body. He didn't kill it with the sword of primordial spirit to show off his skills. Besides, there was no one else here. He was actually afraid of damaging the giant python's body. The value of a complete corpse like this would be much higher. Then Leng Shiqi walked to the deepest part of the cave. There was a short bamboo here. The bamboo was pure black, and there was a faint demonic aura around it. Leng Shiqi raised his eyebrows. Could this be a rank 6 material, Weeping Soul Magic Bamboo? This is an excellent material for refining demonic weapons. Not bad, not bad. He carefully moved the Weeping Soul Magic Bamboo into the system space. Then he took out a few spiritual stones and fed them to the four-legged metal-swallowing beast. Little thing, so you're quite capable. The little beast proudly raised its little head like a human and didn't forget to chew on the spirit stones with a crunching sound. Come, let's continue. Just like that, Leng Shiqi brought the four-legged metal-swallowing beast to plunder all kinds of treasures in Air Scar Sky. In just half a day he had obtained many rank 6 treasures. Could be said that he made a lot of money. During this period he hadn't met anyone else. After all, the number of people who came in to cultivate was too small. Even if he wanted to meet someone, it was not easy. After more than 2 hours, Leng Shiqi arrived at the next treasure place. But from afar he sensed the fluctuation of spiritual power from a fight. The treasure here had been discovered and started to fight for it. Leng Shiqi opened his eyes. His expression immediately darkened. In his perception, there were 5 spirit astral realm masters besieging 2 spirit cultivators at the first level of spirit astral realm several miles away. Those 2 were Yushu and Meng Ming. Chapter 660. 7 gang spirit realm experts were fighting fiercely beside a sacred tree emitting pure blue spiritual power. 2 of them were wearing the same blood-red clothes. They were Yushu and Meng Ming, who came with Leng Yu. Out of the other 5, 3 of them were also wearing aqua-blue robes, while the other 2 were dressed in luxurious attire. The 5 people were in the early, middle and late stages of gang spirit realm. Obviously they had the upper hand in the battle. After all, Yushu and Meng Ming were just in the early stages of gang spirit realm. Even if they were strong, it was difficult for them to face 5 gang spirit realm experts. What was more, in Leng Shiqi's view, Yushu and Meng Ming were both practicing assassination. Now they were surrounded by so many people. 6 years ago, several elders of our Yenshui sect were killed by the killers of your Blood Cloak Pavilion. You have been hiding, but now you dare to show up. Today I will avenge your elders. The dark and thin middle-aged man said angrily. Yenshui sect was one of the top 9 sects in the world. There were 2 Sky Origin Realm experts in the sect, which was famous in the region. 6 years ago, Yenshui sect led a group of young disciples out of the mountain for experience. As a result, 1 Heavenman Realm expert and 3 Gang Spirit Realm experts were assassinated by the killers of the Blood Cloak Pavilion. Yushu's mouth was not idle even as he fought. Oh, you're blaming me for not being as skilled as others? What's more, it was someone else who wanted to kill your elders. Why go against the Blood Cloak Pavilion? Nonsense. You killed them. It's natural for you to pay with your life. Then aren't you afraid of offending the Blood Cloak Pavilion and killing the disciples of Yenshui sect every day? Yushu broke their joint attack with 1 strike and continued. Ah, this is Air Scar Sky. Who knows how you died? Ha ha ha. Yushu also laughed wildly. Well said. I'll say the same to you. In the next moment, Yushu's eyes were suddenly tainted by a thick black color, leaving only a hellish darkness in his eyes. He held the spirit saber in his hand, and the spirit light of the saber suddenly shrank. Even the aura of Yushu's entire body became still. Yushu stared straight at the dark-skinned man. He actually felt as if he was being solidified by death. For some reason, a great sense of despair suddenly rose from the bottom of his heart. He clearly had the upper hand in terms of numbers and strength. If nothing unexpected happened, it wouldn't take long for him to kill these 2 blood-clothing pavilion assassins and avenge his master. But it was so inexplicable that his situation seemed to have been reversed. He was always on the edge of the cliff, and if he wasn't careful, he would fall into the abyss and die without a burial place. In the face of death, despair instantly spread throughout his entire body. The black skinny man's body instantly stiffened. Yushu coldly smiled. Even though he was wearing a mask, one could still see the cold smile on his face. Immediately, a saber light flashed and the black skinny man was directly cut into 2 halves. Strangely, those who were fighting stopped at the same time. The 4 Gang Spirit Realm experts were all shocked. Especially the remaining 2 Yenshui sect disciples, their faces were full of astonishment. They were fighting well just now. How could they be killed in the blink of an eye? How could the blood-clothing pavilion disciples be so strong? Junior brother Shui. Go to hell. The 2 flew into a rage and hit out their palms at the same time. Instantly, gang spirits swept over like huge waves as if to tear Yushu into pieces. At this time, Xiongming moved his body, and the black air around him soared into the sky. Several huge ghost shadows walked out of the black air, each of which had the strength of spiritual aperture realm. As soon as the ghost shadows appeared, they fearlessly entangled the 4 people. 4 Gang Spirit Realm experts, it was a piece of cake to break the ghost shadows. The ghost shadows that rushed to the Yenshui sect disciples were swallowed by the wave palm force before they even got close to them. However, they didn't notice that Xiongming's figure had disappeared. At the same time, Yushu also turned around and ran away. His breath was rapidly weakening as if he had lost a lot of his spiritual power. Seeing this, the Yenshui sect disciples hurried to catch up with him, but they didn't know that Xiongming had appeared behind them like a ghost. A pair of ferocious fist blades appeared on his arms, and the fist blades were like 2 evil ghosts opening their mouths and rushing forward. The 2 Yenshui sect disciples also noticed the abnormality behind them. They waved their arms and huge waves rolled back, destroying Xiongming's figure in an instant. The blood-clothing pavilion is just SOSO. Seeing that Xiongming was killed so easily, the two people who were shocked by Yushu also felt relieved. After all, they were all disciples of top sects, and one of them was killed when they were outnumbered, which was a great blow to the Yanshui sect's face. Now that they had killed one of them, the other one was also struggling at death's door. As long as they killed these two blood-clothing pavilion disciples, the Yanshui sect's face would not be disgraced. Watch out. At this moment, the other two experts in luxurious robes suddenly shouted. The Yanshui sect disciples heard it, but before they could react, the two sharp blades had already pierced through one of their hearts. The person spat out a mouthful of blood, which contained the remnants of his heart. Then he slowly fell to the ground with endless unwillingness. Behind him, Xiongming, who had clearly been submerged by the huge wave, was standing there. The fist blades on his arms had all sunk into the person's back. However, Xiongming could not help but gasp for breath. Obviously he had used up a lot of his energy. Whether it was Yushu or Xiongming, they were in a state of exhaustion. However, the remaining three people did not continue to rush forward. This was because an emotion called fear had appeared in their hearts. Especially the baleful aura and killing intent emanating from Yushu and Mengming's bodies, it was terrifying. Two people who had just entered the Gang Spirit Realm had not only survived the siege of 5 Gang Spirit Realm experts, but also killed 2 Yanshui sect disciples with horrible methods. Was this the strength of the blood-clothing pavilion disciples? However, the Yanshui sect was also a top sect. Why was the strength gap between its disciples so huge? The last Yanshui sect disciple was a middle-aged man with a goat horn beard. He said in a trembling voice, "Huayan Marquis, Seek Marquis, these two people are already at the end of their lives. Help me kill them and the Yanshui sect will definitely reward you handsomely." It turned out that the two people were both dukes and marquis of the Thunder Flame dynasty. Well? Huayan Marquis and Seek Marquis both hesitated. Seeing this, the goat-horned man panicked. He hurriedly said, "As long as you kill these two people of the blood-clothing pavilion, we will give all our resources to you two dukes and marquis. And we will report to Martial Uncle that the Yanshui sect will owe you a favor." Huayan Marquis and Seek Marquis looked at each other. They were both tempted. For them, resources were not the most important thing. As a top sect, the favor of the Yanshui sect was absolutely valuable. Especially when the imperial power was about to be handed over, if they had the support of a top sect, they could basically continue to enjoy a lifetime of glory and wealth. The two immediately showed their evil faces and walked towards Yushu and Xiongming with murderous intent. Mother Ker, I didn't provoke anyone. How unlucky. But I did drag 2 of them down with me, so it's not a loss. Don't you think so? Yushu chuckled. Xiongming retreated to his side, crossing his arms and saying nothing. Seeing that the two people stopped running, the goat-horned man and his 2 companions thought that they had given up resistance. But unexpectedly, a person had quietly appeared. Chapter 661. Outside of Void Scar Sky in the Imperial Palace, hundreds of people were sitting in a circle, staring at the jade tablets. These jade tablets were connected to the life tablets of the cultivators who entered Void Scar Sky. If someone died in Void Scar Sky, then his jade tablet outside would be destroyed. In the first few hours, there was no movement from the jade tablets, which was expected by everyone. Although the cultivators who entered had some grudges and had their own standpoints, the main task this time was to find the Heavenly Thunderfire bead. Before they found the exact location of the Heavenly Thunderfire bead, they would not fight to the death. However, a soft sound suddenly slapped them hard in the face. The sound was very soft, but in everyone's ears, it was no less than a clap of thunder on the ground. Everyone looked at the place where the life tablets were. One of them had broken into several pieces. A little eunuch hurriedly ran over and picked it up, then shouted, "Shui Yinping of the Evolving Water Sect, fallen." Bus. Suddenly, there was a burst of noise from the crowd. Someone from the Evolving Water Sect is dead? This is a top sect. Any disciple in the sect is extremely strong. How could they die like this? Could it be that the Evolving Water Sect has sided with some prince? No, as far as I know, the Evolving Water Sect has not been roped in by any prince. They do not want to get involved in the fight for the throne. That's strange. There was also someone who had a good relationship with the Evolving Water Sect who said, "Let's contact the leader of the Evolving Water Sect, and let him be mentally prepared." However, as soon as this person finished speaking, another jade tablet on the other side actually shattered. And the location was right next to the one just now. The little eunuch had not gone far, his footsteps paused and he turned back with a look of astonishment. He said, "Zhang Zhong of the Evolving Water Sect, fallen." The originally noisy voices quieted down instantly, many people were surprised and even more were frowning. The Evolving Water Sect was a top sect, but 2 of their disciples had died in succession. What kind of danger did they encounter in Void Scar Sky? There were also some people who didn't get along with Yanshui sect who snickered secretly. There were many disciples in Gang Spirit Realm and Yanshui sect, but those who were sent to attend the birthday banquet were definitely the ones with the greatest potential. 2 of them died at once, which was a great loss for Yanshui sect. The crowd continued to discuss and speculate about what had happened to the people of the Evolving Water sect. However, they were interrupted by 3 crisp sounds at the same time. Another person died. This time, the little eunuch simply did not leave, because one of the 3 broken jade tablets was still with him. Du Bang Huayan Marquis and Sikh Marquis from the Yanshui sect are dead. As soon as he said that, the crowd finally couldn't care less about the rules and exploded. The 3 disciples of the Evolving Water sect had been completely annihilated, and even the 2 dukes of the Thunderflame dynasty had perished. The key point was that the 3 of them had died at the same time. Things couldn't be so coincidental, unless someone had killed them at the same time. However, the people who entered Void Scar Sky were all in Gang Spirit Realm, who had the strength to kill 3 people. Some people also thought that many people had joined hands to kill them, and that Marquis Huayan and Marquis Sikh had secretly taken refuge with some prince. Maybe they had encountered a deadly enemy. The strange thing was that the Evolving Water sect didn't take refuge with any prince, so why were they killed? Wasn't the one who killed them not afraid of the revenge of the Evolving Water sect? Not everyone could withstand the wrath of a top sect. Just when the crowd was thinking nonsense in Void Scar Sky, Lung Shichi skillfully picked up the mustard seed bracelets of the 5 dead people, and said lightly, "Long time no see." Tut tut tut. Yushu walked back and forth around Lung Shichi, and his eyes were full of surprise. Brother Lung is indeed Brother Lung. His strength is still so abnormal, and he killed 3 Gang Spirit Realm cultivators without any hesitation. Only a few words popped out of his mouth, "You are getting stronger and stronger." Just now, the 2 of them had risked their lives to kill 2 of the 5 people. They seemed to be very strong, but they also consumed a lot of energy, so they really had the power to kill. But as soon as Lung Shichi appeared, he waved his hand and the sword chi filled the sky, and then waved his hand to burn the world. In just a few breaths, the remaining goateed man, Marquis Huayan and Marquis Sikh, were all dead. Lung Shichi's strength was far behind Yushu and Meng Shichi. They had also tried their best to practice, and they had just broken through the Gang Spirit Realm after a lot of training, but they were still far behind Lung Shichi. Lung Shichi knew what they were thinking. He looked at the 2 of them and asked in a serious tone, "Both of you should have your own blood seed plan, right?" Yushu said bluntly, "Yes, the blood-clothed pavilion put me in the ultimate saber hall of the 8 Baron Weapons Doctrine, but I kept a low profile there, so I didn't come to the birthday party with them. I went to the Purgatory Devil sect." Meng Shichi said briefly. This kind of thing was supposed to be strictly confidential, and even the people who were also involved in the blood seed plan could not easily say it. But the 2 of them said it without hesitation, which made Lung Shichi more certain of his idea. He asked tentatively, "Then do you really want to complete the so-called blood seed plan for the blood-clothed pavilion?" Yushu and Meng Shichi looked at each other. They were both very smart, and they immediately understood the meaning of Lung Shichi's words. Humph. Yushu snorted, "The blood-clothed pavilion erased our memories and threw us into the Blood Fog Island to fend for ourselves. No matter how much compensation they give us later, I won't have any sense of belonging." In their eyes were just tools. Meng Shichi did not say anything but nodded in agreement. "Good." Lung Shichi said in a deep voice, "Since we have the same idea, then I am here to invite you to join my organization. Currently, my organization only consists of Delta Origi and myself, as well as 2 masters from the 6 Western Kingdoms. This is not a sect, but an organization for everyone to take what they need." Yushu immediately laughed and said, "Ha, Brother Lung, you are finally willing to stand up. I will join without hesitation. The 4 of us fought our way out of the Blood Fog Island, so we have to make something out of it, not be a spy. By the way, have you given your organization a name? How about we call it the Blood-Clothed 4? Lung Shichi's eyes twitched. He ignored Yushu and looked at Meng Shichi. Meng Shichi seemed to be hesitating. He said, "I have a condition." "Say it." "I want to be stronger." Both Leng Shiqi and Yu Shu could sense Ming Ming's strong thirst for power as soon as he said those words. Leng Shiqi thought that he still had a huge amount of resources, and he could use the system shop. It was not a big problem to help Meng Shiqi increase his strength, so he said, "Okay." Meng Shiqi also said, "Okay." Chapter 662. After receiving Hengming's reply, Leng Shiqi smiled knowingly. Yu Shu and Hengming were already on his list of Underworld members. The first condition for Underworld's next upgrade was to recruit 3 members, and he had already found 2 of them. As for the third, he planned to choose between Di Chuan and Wu Diao, but he still hadn't decided which one to choose. Following which, Leng Shiqi used the territory system to plant Underworld imprints on Yu Shu and Hengming. He then said, "Our organization is called Underworld. I can take you to Underworld right now to have a look." Right now? Yu Shu was confused. But we're still in Void Scar Sky. How do we get there? Leng Shiqi reached out with his spiritual power and enveloped the 2 of them. Don't resist. Following which, the 3 of them suddenly disappeared from Void Scar Sky. In the next instant, the 3 of them arrived at Underworld. Upon entering Underworld, Yu Shu and Hengming were both stunned. Setting aside Underworld's terrain and appearance, the most prominent feeling in Underworld was the omnipresent ghostly aura and ghostly aura. The 2 of them also cultivated bloodthirsty energy and ghostly aura, so they had the most profound experience. What kind of secret realm is this? Not only is it extremely strange, but it can also open Underworld's secret realm in Void Scar Sky. This is simply unheard of. Yu Shu said in disbelief. Even the usually taciturn Hengming said in surprise, "The aura here is even denser and purer than the ghostly aura that Master Black Frost cultivates. If I cultivate here, I'll be able to achieve twice the results with half the effort." Hearing their words, Leng Shiqi thought to himself. Only now did he realize that Underworld's environment was indeed very suitable for demonic cultivators. Moreover, if Hengming and Leng Shiqi cultivated in Underworld while he moved around outside, wouldn't that mean that he could hide people in the dark? In particular, Underworld's uniqueness allowed it to open other secret realms at will. For example, for this trip to Void Scar Sky, if there were more members of Underworld, he could completely ignore the rules of the Thunderflame dynasty and bring in even more experts. Of course, this matter had to be kept a secret and could not be discovered by others. Another example was that in the future he could go into battle alone and release a large group of experts at the crucial moment to catch them off guard. While Leng Shiqi was deep in thought, 2 huge clouds of black gas suddenly erupted from Fengdu City at the peak of the Underworld. Even the entire Underworld trembled slightly. 2 streams of energy flowed like black rivers, flowing toward Yu Shu and Hengming. At the same time, an ancient voice reverberated throughout the Underworld. Conferred the title of King Qingguangyu. Conferred the title of King of Equality Ming. Leng Shiqi's expression stiffened. He had seen such things before, and that was when Tu Deng was conferred the title of Xidagarba after entering the Underworld. This time, Yu Shu and Hengming were also conferred the titles of King Qingguang and King Pingdeng of the 10 Kings of Hell. This was definitely a great benefit for them. Unfortunately, Leng Shiqi did not know what the benefits were. It must be something like an inheritance. What made Leng Shiqi even more speechless was that why did he not receive any inheritance? He was clearly the Emperor of Fengdu, the master of the Underworld. Thinking of this, Leng Shiqi really wanted to cry. He could only console himself with the excuse that his status was too high, and the Underworld's level was too low. At this time, he also realized that there were some differences between their inheritance and Tu Deng's. Tu Deng did not last long at that time and he quickly regained consciousness. However, Yu Shu and Hengming both subconsciously sat cross-legged with their eyes closed. It seemed that they still needed some time. Leng Shiqi pondered for a moment. In any case, they already went through a fierce battle and did not have much spiritual power left. They can slowly accept the inheritance here. Then he called Li Gui and Sound Gui to watch over them and report to him as soon as they woke up. He was really curious about what they would receive. After leaving the Underworld, Leng Shiqi appeared in Air Scar Sky again, still at the place where he entered the Underworld. As soon as he appeared, he opened his supercilious eyes. There was no one else within a radius of dozens of miles, so he was relieved. Then he walked to the side of the divine tree that was emitting blue spiritual light. This was also the reason why the few of them met and fought. This is the water-drenched flower tree. Leng Shiqi barely recognized this item and was slightly shocked. This water-drenched flower tree was a rare treasure. Its trunk, branches, and leaves were all excellent materials for refining 7th-level water attribute spiritual weapons. Moreover, this tree would bear a water-drenched flower fruit every 100 years. Even if it was directly swallowed, it could greatly increase the cultivation of a spirit astral realm cultivator. If it was refined into a pill, the effect would be even better. However, Leng Shiqi only found a blue fruit the size of a fingernail on the tree. It was obviously not ripe yet. If he dug up this tree and did not cultivate it in time, it would not live for long. It would be a pity to just use it as a material for refining weapons. After all, Leng Shiqi was also very interested in the water-drenched flower fruit. No one could resist the increase in cultivation. Thus, he moved the water-drenched flower tree into the system space. Everything here was in a state of static time. He would think of a way to cultivate it after he got out. If he could really produce a water-drenched flower fruit in a short period of time, then his cultivation would improve greatly. In the end, he wiped away all traces of the battle and continued to search for treasures with the 4-legged metal-swallowing beast. One after another, rare materials and treasures fell into his pocket. He was very satisfied, but the others were not like that. Void Scar Sky was so big and there were so few people. It was too difficult to find a single bead. Thus, when the princes entered Air Scar Sky, they all used secret techniques to gather together as quickly as possible and then searched through every nook and cranny. When they started searching, they also came across many heavenly materials and earthly treasures. However, none of them fought for these treasures because these treasures couldn't even be compared to the throne of the emperor. Although these people did not care much about the heavenly treasures, it did not mean that they would get along peacefully. The conflicts and hatred between the princes and the sects were very deep. They also knew that before they found the heavenly Thunderfire Pearl, there was no need to fight to the death. However, they could not avoid a certain amount of conflict. In the outside world, the jade tablets began to shatter. Including the 5 that had died at the beginning, more than 20 people had died. These people were all the top disciples of the various sects, or the geniuses that had been nurtured by the Thunderfire dynasty. Every time one of them died, it would cause some people to feel heartache. 20 hours had passed since Space Scar Sky had opened, and Leng Shiqi's search for treasures was unexpectedly interrupted. This was because he had discovered a very strange place within Space Scar Sky. At this moment he was standing under a black cloud. And within the black cloud, there was a ghost castle that was faintly discernible. Chapter 663. Leng Shiqi was not the only one who came here. Before him there were already 3 groups of people here. Leng Shiqi looked over. One side was led by the 4th prince, Lei Haoran, and had a total of more than 20 people. The other side was led by the 9th prince, Lei Haoqing, and there were only a dozen people behind him. As for the 3rd side, rather than calling it a group of people, it was better to call it a group of people. There were spirit cultivators from all sides in this group. The Discipline Division, the Dark Thunder Guards, the military, the Marquis, and individual spirit cultivator sects were all present. They had the largest number of people, about 40 of them. However, these people did not gather together. Instead, they were scattered in 2s and 3s. Among this group of people, Leng Shiqi only recognized 2 or 3 people, and one of them was Delta Origi. Delta Origi was dressed in a red dress and stood proudly, like an incomparably gorgeous blood-colored rose with sharp thorns. From time to time, some gazes would fall on her, especially the white-faced scholar standing beside her, who was saying something with a face full of eagerness. Other than Delta Origi, there were also 2 spirit cultivators dressed in the Dark Thunder Guard's uniform. Leng Shiqi could only say that he had some impression of them. He had seen them a few times, but he could not remember their names. He could only vaguely remember that they seemed to be Manager Hai's subordinates. However, the 2 of them recognized Leng Shiqi. The older middle-aged man shouted, "Lord Lu, I am the eunuch Li Gang. This is Gong Liang Hui. Greetings, Lord." Leng Shiqi had already become the deputy director. Although eunuch Gao did not announce this matter in public, the appointment of the deputy director of the Dark Thunder Guard's headquarters could not be hidden. Basically, all the Dark Thunder Guards already knew about it. Not to mention whether or not others were dissatisfied or had some criticism in their hearts, in front of outsiders, they still had to give face. Leng Shiqi walked towards Li Gang and Gong Liang Hui. Most of the others also looked at Leng Shiqi. Not many of them knew the Leng Shiqi, but Li Gang and Gong Liang Hui were both supervisors. The only person who could be addressed as Lord by the supervisors was the deputy chief. Everyone felt it a little incredible that this unknown guy in the middle stage of Gang Spirit Realm should be one of the 36 deputy directors of the Dark Thunder Guard. In other people's impression, not to mention the deputy supervisor, even most of the inner supervisor's cultivation base was at the unity of heaven and man realm. Only those with great potential and background could become the inner supervisor in Gang Spirit Realm. But they had never heard of a deputy director in Gang Spirit Realm. The fourth prince, Lei Haoran, turned and asked, "Who is this Lu Xingji?" The man in a long gown behind him replied, "Your Highness, this man is Manager Gao's disciple. He has great potential and strength. A year ago he was the one who attacked the Thunder Destruction Alliance and the Sky Crane Gang in Shantai County. Some time ago, he also escorted the envoys of the Starfall Dynasty and the 6 countries of the Western region to the Imperial capital. During the period there were no accidents, so he won the trust of Manager Gao. I just got the news that he has been promoted to the deputy chief. But he only has the title of deputy chief, and has no relative rights. Presumably Manager Gao doesn't want him to be too conspicuous." Lei Haoran's eyes showed that he was thinking. He sneered softly and said, "So it was him. He helped Lei Haoga, that good for nothing, so that he could make a name for himself in Shantai County. Speaking of which, Lei Haoga was self-aware and didn't come to father's birthday banquet this time. Otherwise, with his little power, he would have been eliminated long ago. But since Lu Xingji can be the deputy chief, it means that he has some real skills. We can try to win him over. If he doesn't know how to appreciate our kindness, humph." Before Lei Haoga was driven out of the imperial capital, the two of them were not on good terms. Later on, Lei Haoga hid in Shantai County and had a hard time, which made Lei Haoran very happy. But Leng Shiqi's trip to Shantai County had made Lei Haoga's reputation soar. He had also made a good show in front of Lei Qingjun, and his power grew stronger and stronger. Therefore Lei Haoran and Leng Shiqi were not happy with each other. As for Lei Haoqing, he would never have thought that the assassin who tried to assassinate him would walk past him right in front of his eyes. When Leng Shiqi passed by Delta Origi, he glanced at the pale-faced scholar and quietly transmitted his voice to Delta Origi, "Pursuer." "Yes." Delta Origi's proud voice also transmitted its voice. "He is the disciple of the Discipline Commission's Grand Commander Yun Xingxing. He is already half a step into the realm of oneness of heaven and man. His future is limitless. There's nothing good about a pretty boy. But he's still better than some people with special hobbies." Leng Shiqi. Fine, he couldn't explain what happened between him and Hua Luyue. He walked over to Li Gang and Gong Lianghui. The three of them exchanged pleasantries for a while. Leng Shiqi then asked, "You two, do you know what is in the sky?" "The two princes are not looking for the heavenly Thunderfire Pearl but are staying here." "Could it be that the heavenly Thunderfire Pearl is here?" Li Gang said flatteringly, "Lord Lu, you may not know, but the castle in the clouds here is the ruins of the Cloud House Demon Palace, one of the 6 demonic realms from 1,000 years ago. When the Thunderfire dynasty was first established, the Cloud House Demon Palace did not know what was good for them and stood against the dynasty. In the end it was destroyed. The ruins of the Cloud House Demon Palace were placed in Void Scar Sky for future generations to slowly explore. Now no one knows where the heavenly Thunderfire Pearl is. The Cloud House Demon Palace could be said to be one of the most precious places in Void Scar Sky. The heavenly Thunderfire Pearl might be placed here. Unfortunately, the Cloud House Demon Palace is not a place that anyone can easily enter. Lord Lu, you can see that the black fog around the castle is irregular. Only when the black fog is at its weakest can you force your way in. Of course, if you have the key you can enter at any time." "Key?" Leng Shiqi asked in confusion. "That's right. Although it's called a key, it's actually the token of a high-grade disciple of the Cloud House Demon Palace. More accurately, it's a key as long as it's made of the same material. After all, the Cloud House Demon Palace has been destroyed for more than 1,000 years. Those tokens have long been lost. Some of them have been taken away and refined into other things. I heard that the 13th prince obtained a key not long ago." Leng Shiqi nodded. No wonder Lei Haoran and Lei Haoqing were here. It was possible that the heavenly Thunderfire Pearl was in the Cloud House Demon Palace. However, the latter half of Li Gang's words reminded him of something. Not long after he arrived in the imperial capital, he had participated in an auction held by the Heavenly Treasures Pavilion. It was at that auction that he obtained the wondrous fish and water pleasure technique and met his senior sister Sulwan. He remembered that the last item of that auction was a 6th-level spiritual weapon, the life-reaping demon spear. At that time, everyone was puzzled as to why the 13th prince, Lei Haoyun, would spend so many spiritual stones to buy a 6th-level spiritual weapon. It turned out that the life-reaping demon spear was the key to entering the Cloud House Demon Palace. It seemed that Lei Haoyun had been prepared since then. As the saying goes, people can't be nagged. At this moment, Lei Haoyun walked over with more than 20 Gang Spirit Realm experts. 4th brother, 9th brother, what a coincidence. Chapter 664. Lei Haoyun's arrival made the situation even more tense. Originally, there were only 2 competitors and Lei Haoqing was weaker than Lei Haoran, so he wasn't too worried. However, Lei Haoyun was also here, and his numbers were only slightly less than Lei Haoran's. He was already a great threat to Lei Haoran. Also, just as Li Gang had said, Lei Haoyun had the key to enter the demonic Cloud Palace. He didn't need to wait at all and could directly open the entrance and bring people in. In this way, Lei Haoyun had a huge advantage. If the Heavenly Thunderfire Pearl was really inside, then it would be very bad. I have to stop Lei Haoyun, Lei Haoran said resolutely. Lei Haoqing had the same idea. The reason why he had been so calm was because he knew that his power couldn't compare to Lei Haoran's, but it didn't mean that he didn't have the ability to fight. There was a prerequisite, and that was that everyone had to enter the demonic Cloud Palace together. Lei Haoyun's appearance was equivalent to breaking this balance. Who asked him to have the key? Lei Haoqing immediately looked at Lei Haoran, and they quickly made a decision through their eyes. The 2 of them took a step forward at the same time, faintly blocking Lei Haoyun's path. Royal brothers, what is the meaning of this? Lei Haoyun said with a smile. Cut the crap. Lei Haoqing didn't give him any face. You are indeed powerful, to secretly find out that the life-stealing demon spear is the key to enter the demonic Cloud Palace. Presumably, you already knew that Royal Father would open the Void Scar Sky. Royal Father is indeed too biased towards you. However, don't think that you can easily enter the demonic Cloud Palace today. Lei Haoran said leisurely, 13th brother, you have always been concealing your strength, and you should know best that we still haven't found the Heavenly Thunderfire Pearl, so there is no need for us to die. 9th brother and I together have twice as many people as you. Listen to 4th brother's advice and retreat. Lei Haoyun shook his head as if he didn't care about the threat in Lei Haoran's words. The possibility that the Heavenly Thunderfire Pearl is in the demonic Cloud Palace is not low. I cannot give up. Even if you 2 royal brothers are here, you can't change my decision. Then you want to refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit? Lei Haoqing snorted coldly. Lei Haoyun clasped his hands behind his back. He did not put Lei Haoqing in his eyes at all. Then let's try. You. Lei Haoqing was instantly enraged, but he didn't act rashly. He always felt that Lei Haoyun was so arrogant because he was prepared. Lei Haoyun clearly knew that his strength was no match for the combined strength of the 2 of them, yet he was still so domineering. Could it be that he really had some sort of trump card? As a result, the scene was in a stalemate. The spirit cultivators of the 3 sides slowly stepped forward, and the battle of only 100 Gang Spirit Realm Masters could break out at any time. However, no one made the first move. They were all unusually cautious. Meanwhile, Lung Shiqi was secretly laughing. He transmitted his voice to the Delta Origi. Why don't you guess why Lei Haoyun is so confident? Delta Origi pondered. Could it be that one of us is one of his men? No. Lung Shiqi shook his head. Actually, Lei Haoyun isn't even here. What did you say? Delta Origi did not seem to believe Lung Shiqi. Lei Haoyun was clearly standing in front of everyone. His aura, voice, and appearance were all undoubtedly Lei Haoyun. How could he not be here? Lung Shiqi said, there will be a good show later. Let's wait and see. Time passed little by little. Just as everyone was confronting each other on the other side, a man secretly ran to the bottom of the Cloud Tower Demon Palace. He held a dark magic spear in his hand. As the tip of the spear was raised, a strange rhythm spread out and connected with the black fog around the Cloud Tower Demon Palace. In a few breaths, the man manipulated the black fog to form a small entrance. The black fog stirred and attracted everyone's attention at once. When Lei Haoran and Lei Haoqing saw the man holding the magic spear, they were extremely surprised. Because that man was the 13th Prince, Lei Haoyun. How could it be? Then who is this man? The 2 turned their heads and saw that Lei Haoyun and more than 20 Gang Spirit Realm cultivators, who had just been arguing with them, had disappeared like bubbles in the water. It turned out that these figures were all fake. They were all fooled. Even though they didn't know what secret treasure or secret method Lei Haoyun used, this trick was really clever. The Cloud Tower Demon Palace was not big or small, and it was more than 10 miles in radius. It was impossible for them to stop Lei Haoyun from their current position. But it was hard for them to accept that Lei Haoyun led people into the Cloud Tower Demon Palace first. Your Highness, look, the black fog has become much thinner. The man next to Lei Haoyun suddenly shouted. Lei Haoyun quickly looked up and found that because Lei Haoyun had condensed a portal, the black fog in other places had become thinner, which meant that they could forcibly break through the black fog and enter the Cloud Tower Demon Palace. Aha, Lei Haoyun, you didn't expect that. In the end it was all for us. Lei Haoyun changed his usual feminine image and laughed wildly. Lei Haoqing, let's work together to break through the black fog and enter the Cloud Tower Demon Palace together. No matter whether the Heavenly Thunderfire Pearl is inside or not, who will get it, it will depend on our own ability. Lei Haoqing did not hesitate. He knew very well that even if the black fog was thinner, it was difficult for him to break through the black fog with his own strength. It was indeed a good choice to continue to work with Lei Haoyun. Well, let's go in together. Then only 50 Gang Spirit Realm experts from both sides gathered together, ready to use their strongest strength to forcibly break through the black fog. As for the remaining scattered spirit cultivators, they had the same idea. Most of them were neutral people. After all, whether it was the Discipline Commission or the Dark Thunder Guards, they must maintain absolute neutrality, at least on the surface. Although they didn't care much about whether the Heavenly Thunderfire Pearl was here or not, the treasures in the Cloud Tower Demon Palace made them very interested and wanted to go in and explore. In fact, Lung Shiqi had quietly opened the supercilious eyes and seen through Lei Haoyun's trick, but he didn't say anything. Anyway, it had nothing to do with him. Just when Lei Haoyun secretly stirred the black fog with the life-stealing demon refining spear to open the door, a spiritual weapon in Lung Shiqi's storage bracelet suddenly trembled a few times. Lung Shiqi took it out with some doubts. It was the inky jade sword that he hadn't used for a long time. Since he got the Blood Shadow sword from Di Chuan, he hadn't used the inky jade sword for some time because the Blood Shadow sword was more suitable for him. When the inky jade sword appeared, Lung Shiqi felt that the sword had something to do with the black fog in the sky. He held the inky jade sword and had the ability to control the black fog. He didn't show it on the surface, but he was shocked in his heart. The inky jade sword is also a key. Chapter 665. Lung Shiqi himself was also very strange. His inky jade sword could be said to be a product of the system. He remembered that when he came out of the Phantom Spirit Secret Realm, he fused the recasting card with other materials to get the inky jade sword in order not to expose his identity. Later, he used the Advanced Spear Talisman to upgrade the inky jade sword to a level 6 spiritual weapon. It was reasonable to say that it had nothing to do with the Cloud Tower Demon Palace. No. Lung Shiqi suddenly remembered something that happened a long time ago. When he was still in the Spirit Transformation Realm, in order to break through the Spiritual Pulse Realm as soon as possible, he took the risk to go to the demonic Miasma Mountain Range. He bought an unknown black iron egg from a stall in the demon-suppressing town. At that time, from the price of the system, it was very valuable, so he cheated and got it. But later, he had been constantly on the move and had no time to study it, so he simply smelted it as a material when he recast the inky jade sword. He couldn't help thinking in surprise, is that black thing the material of the Cloud Tower Demon Palace to refine the token? Or is it the remnant left after the token was destroyed? He would never have thought that the small bargain he had coveted was the key to enter the Cloud Tower Demon Palace. Lung Shiqi watched the dozens of Gang Spirit Realm Masters form a formation and attack the black fog with all their strength. In an instant, the terrible spiritual power fluctuations shook the world and the mountains shook. The rest of the spirit cultivators were also in the Gang Spirit Realm, but they still kept retreating. Lung Shiqi looked up. Under the joint efforts of so many masters, the black fog of the Cloud Tower Demon Palace was torn open. But the opening was also slowly closing. Lei Haoyun immediately shouted, "It's no time to lose. Go in." Dozens of Gang Spirit Realm Masters jumped into the black fog like a swarm of bees. It could be imagined that the war between the three princes had completely begun. He just didn't know whether the Heavenly Thunderfire bead was here or not. The rest of the people had little to do with the Crown Prince. Maybe some of them had turned to the first Prince Lei Haoyun or other princes, but it was better not to show up. These people were fine now, but they were a little unwilling to leave just like that. Actually, those who were able to enter the Void Scar Sky were more or less prepared. The Void Scar Sky had been opened a few times in the history of the Thunderblaze dynasty. Naturally, there would be some information about it. However, there was almost no information about the Cloud Tower Demon Palace. From this, it could be seen that there were very few people who had entered the Cloud Tower Demon Palace. This also meant that the Cloud Tower Demon Palace was in a state that had not been explored much, and there was a high chance that there were rare treasures. Especially for spirit cultivator who cultivated devil arts, the attraction of the Cloud Tower Demon Palace was not ordinary. First it was the 13th Prince, Lei Haoyan, who used the key to enter. Then it was the 4th Prince, Lei Haoran, and the 9th Prince, Lei Haoqing, who worked together to force their way in. In fact, with everyone's strength, if they worked together, they would have a chance to break in. However, they all came from completely different forces or even hostile forces. Therefore, it was impossible for them to join forces. Thus, everyone had no choice but to slowly disperse. In any case, there was no point in staying here. If they continued to wait for the black fog to thin out, who knew how long they would have to wait? At that time, even if they entered, the things inside would have already been plundered. The gains would not make up for the losses. Li Gang asked Leng Shiqi. Master Lu, let's leave as well. I still have some things to do. Let's part ways here. Leng Shiqi could tell that Li Gang wanted to go together, but he had his own plans and did not want to cause any trouble. Li Gang's expression froze and said, Master, are you not coming with us? There are a total of 10 people from the Dark Thunder Guards, and it is not easy for the 3 of us to meet. Furthermore, there are some dangers in the Void Scar Sky. Whether it is fighting for resources or avoiding danger, it is the best choice for us to gather together. Leng Shiqi continued to shake his head. Even so, I am used to being alone. I'm not used to traveling with others. Li Gang seemed to want to say something, but Gong Lianghui, who was beside him, said, Since Master Lu has made up his mind, we will not waste any more time. Farewell. Leng Shiqi did not say anything. He secretly sent a message to the Delta Origi, and then went in a certain direction. Li Gang and Gong Lianghui walked in the same direction as Leng Shiqi. After a while, when there was no one around, Li Gang turned around and asked, Gong Lianghui, why did you let Lu Xingji go? It was not easy to meet him. I heard that he has a high-level movement technique. Where are we going to find him now? If we ruin Manager Li's plans, you and I will not be able to bear the consequences. Gong Lianghui smiled sinisterly and said, Brother Li, there is no need to worry. I have secretly left an imprint on Lu Xingji's body, and I can sense his location. Brother Li, it is not that I want to boost the morale of others, but do you think the 2 of us can stop Lu Xingji? Li Gang was speechless. If Lu Xingji is so easy to kill, why would Manager Li gather so many people to kill him? If we follow him shamelessly, we will arouse his suspicions. The most important thing now is to gather people and kill him in one fell swoop. Gong Lianghui said fiercely. Yes, Brother Gong Lianghui is more thoughtful. Leng Shiqi, on the other hand, had been staring at the 2 of them from dozens of miles away. In fact, when they separated, he had noticed that Gong Lianghui had quietly left an undetectable light spot on his body. At that time he knew that there was something wrong with the 2 of them. He also guessed that the person who wanted to kill him was none other than Li Juqing. However, he did not remove the light spot. Instead, he wanted to use this opportunity to make Li Juqing suffer great losses. However, before that, he had another important thing to do. Thinking of this, he dived into the ground and quickly returned to the Yunlu Demon Palace. He would not give up this good opportunity to explore the Yunlu Demon Palace. Leng Shiqi drilled out of the ground. There was no one around, but his eyes locked onto a direction and he said, Come out. There was a flash of blood-red light, and a blood-red figure appeared. It was Delta Origi. Before Leng Shiqi left, he sent a message to Delta Origi, telling her to hide nearby and prepare to bring her into the Yunlu Demon Palace. Delta Origi did not know how Leng Shiqi could enter, but she did not ask and stayed. Leng Shiqi did not say anything. He unsheathed his inky jade sword and instantly communicated with the black fog in the sky. In the blink of an eye, the weapons revolved around each other and opened an entrance the size of a person. Then he spread out his 4 colorful wings and flew directly into the Yunlu Demon Palace with Delta Origi. Chapter 666. After entering the Cloud Tower Demon Palace, Leng Shiqi could see nothing but black mist and thick demonic energy. This kind of environment was very suitable for Leng Shiqi, as it was somewhat similar to the underworld. Such pure demonic energy, said Delta Origi. Leng Shiqi noticed that they were in a small courtyard. There were obvious traces of destruction around them and they were all new. It seems like this place has been ransacked. Let's go look elsewhere. The two approached the courtyard door. Just as they were about to leave, Leng Shiqi's footsteps suddenly stopped. What's wrong? Did you find something? Asked Delta Origi curiously. Leng Shiqi did not answer directly. Instead, his expression became a little strange, because the black mark on the spirit crystal in his body suddenly trembled slightly. He looked around and did not find anything special. There were only some black grasses around his feet. They looked a little withered and lifeless. Leng Shiqi picked up one of the grasses. The black mark in his body absorbed a wisp of energy from the grasses as if it was breathing. Just this little bit of energy was enough to increase Leng Shiqi's spiritual energy to a visible level. He roughly calculated that this grasses was equivalent to 2 or 3 days of hard work. This did not sound like a lot, but there was a large patch of grasses around his feet. That's strange, muttered Leng Shiqi in surprise and joy. After entering Void Scar, he had obtained some demonic materials such as the Weeping Soul Demon Bamboo he obtained from killing the Green Giant Python for the first time. However, no matter what kind of treasures he obtained before, the black mark did not react. Now, this inconspicuous grasses were reacting? 3 months ago, after Leng Shiqi stole the body of the Tuoba ancestor from the Tuoba kingdom, he had also triggered the black mark, causing his cultivation to skyrocket. At that time he guessed that the black mark might have the magical ability to absorb demonic energy. Unfortunately, the black mark did not do anything after that. From this point, it was clear that these grasses were not ordinary. Moreover, it was clear that this place had already been searched, but no one had pulled out the grass. It seemed that the previous people had also made a mistake. That's a good deal for me. Leng Shiqi secretly rejoiced. He collected all the grass and counted them carefully. There were about 200 to 300 of them. He estimated that if he absorbed all the magic in it, it would be enough for him to break through to the 6th level of Gang Spirit Realm, or even more. Even if he had to leave Void Scar Sky right now, he would still be satisfied. Leng Shiqi said to Delta Origi, "These grasses are of some use to me, but they don't seem to have any other value." Delta Origi rolled her eyes at him. "What? Are you afraid that I'll steal your grass?" Leng Shiqi knew that he could not win against Delta Origi, so he simply used his supercilious eyes to investigate. Unfortunately, the Yunlu Demon Palace was full of formations, and the range of his supercilious eyes was limited. He could only vaguely see the general direction of some spiritual aura. This situation was within his expectations. He identified the direction and said, "Let's go to the left. It's best not to run into those princes." Now Lei Haoran and the other 2 princes must be searching for the heavenly Thunderfire Pearl with all their strength. Originally there were only 3 of them, but now we are the 4th party. If we are discovered, it will be a big problem. Delta Origi agreed. "Let's go." Then the 2 walked out of the courtyard and came to a long corridor. There was a door at every distance. This seemed to be the place where the disciples of the Yunlu Demon Palace lived. They did not miss any place and went into each courtyard one after another. However, the people who came in before had already been searched. They could even see traces of those people in a hurry. To Leng Shiqi's joy, there were more or less some black grass in each courtyard. But what made him hate was that the people before had unintentionally destroyed some of them. To Leng Shiqi, these small grasses were all cultivation bases. In about a quarter of an hour, the 2 of them quickly looked through all the courtyards. Other than Leng Shiqi's grass, which was more than 1,000, they didn't find anything else. They had no choice but to walk out of the long corridor. Suddenly the space in front of them opened up. There were 6 wide paths scattered in several directions. Leng Shiqi pointed at a path and said, "No one has walked this path before. Let's go take a look." Delta Origi naturally had no objection. But before they walked far, a demon shadow suddenly appeared and pounced on Leng Shiqi. The aura was very strong, comparable to the late stage of Gang Spirit Realm. Leng Shiqi snorted and pinched the Buddha's seal. Suddenly the Buddha's light shone brightly, and purifying lotuses appeared as if they could purify all the evil in the world. Before the demon shadow could get close to Leng Shiqi, most of its demonic chi evaporated in an instant. It also let out a painful howl. Leng Shiqi turned around and saw a half-human half-beast monster with demonic chi all over its body charging over without any regard for its own safety. "You're courting death." Leng Shiqi changed his seal. The Buddha's lotus flowed layer by layer, and a faint golden flame rose above the lotus. As soon as the flame appeared, the demon screamed in horror. Whether it was the Buddha's light or the golden dragon flame, they were both heaven-suppressing demonic arts. Under the combination of the two, even if Leng Shiqi did not use any real spiritual techniques, the demon was on the verge of death in the blink of an eye. Leng Shiqi gently waved his hand, and a Buddhist lotus tainted with pure gold earth dragon flames descended, directly melting the demonic creature. Those who entered Void Scar Sky were all spirit cultivators of Gang Spirit Realm, but there were not many of them in the late stage of Gang Spirit Realm. And this level of demon was definitely comparable to the late stage of Gang Spirit Realm in terms of combat power. If other spirit cultivators encountered it, they would be in danger of losing their lives. But in front of Leng Shiqi, the demon was obliterated before it could get close. Delta Origi also cultivated demonic arts. She frowned and retreated the moment Leng Shiqi attacked. When she saw that Leng Shiqi killed the demon so easily, she could not help but show a touch of surprise. She knew that Leng Shiqi was very strong. Perhaps he had the strength of the late stage of Gang Spirit Realm, but the strength that Leng Shiqi showed was still a little beyond her expectations. Leng Shiqi also frowned slightly at this time, because he did not absorb the demon's soul after it died, which meant that the demon did not have a soul. Everything in the world, whether it was human, demon, or demon, was actually a living thing. How could it not have a soul? Leng Shiqi noticed that there seemed to be a wisp of black gas in the place where the demon disappeared. He quickly put away the Buddha's light and golden dragon flame and walked forward. He found that there was indeed a wisp of black gas as thin as hair swaying with the wind, as if it would completely dissipate at any time. Leng Shiqi's expression became dignified. The fact that this thing could still exist in front of the Buddha's light and golden dragon flame showed that it was unusual. He reached out and touched the black gas. In an instant, the black gas was also absorbed by the black mark on the spirit crystal, and Leng Shiqi's cultivation also increased significantly. Chapter 667. Leng Shiqi sensed it carefully. This wisp of black gas was comparable to the spiritual power he gained from a month's worth of cultivation. This demonic creature might be troublesome or a disaster to others, but to Leng Shiqi, it was clearly a mobile cultivation base. Leng Shiqi no longer had any thoughts of treasure hunting. He only wanted to look for demonic creatures to improve his cultivation base. However, this demonic creature was also very strange. Leng Shiqi had always had his Byakugan open, but when the monster appeared, his Byakugan did not detect it. In addition, the demonic creature did not have a soul after it died. This meant that it was not a living creature. Of course, ordinary people would not want to encounter such a demonic creature. On the other hand, it was not easy to actively find a demonic creature. Delta Origi walked over and looked at Leng Shiqi's happy expression. She asked, "What did you find?" "There is something in my body that can absorb the black gas and convert it into my cultivation base." Leng Shiqi did not hide it. Delta Origi tilted her head slightly. "You have a lot of strange things in your body. It seems that you came to the right place to enter the Cloud Demon Palace." At this moment, Leng Shiqi also remembered that other than the black mark and star mark on the spirit crystal, there was also a golden dragon pattern. This had always been a question in his mind. He asked, "By the way, you also condense spirit crystals in the Thunder Flame Dynasty's dragon vein. Is there anything special about your spirit crystal?" At the mention of this, Delta Origi's expression turned serious. "There is a golden dragon pattern." "As expected," Leng Shiqi said in a deep voice. "If I'm not wrong, anyone who enters the dragon vein to condense spirit crystals will have such a mark. I just don't know if it's a blessing or a curse." I also asked Lei Mayan about this. She said that this is caused by the special environment of the dragon vein. It is said that it can absorb a certain amount of providence. However, providence is illusory and impossible to verify. As long as it doesn't affect cultivation, it's fine. Delta Origi explained. However, Leng Shiqi felt that the dragon pattern was not that simple. There might be more to it. Rumble. Just as they were talking, a series of loud noises came from the distance, followed by a powerful explosion of spiritual light. Many of the buildings in the Cloud Demon Palace began to collapse. Both of them frowned. Delta Origi said, "The battle is so intense. Is the Heavenly Thunderfire Pearl really here?" "Not necessarily." Leng Shiqi looked at the source of the sound with his pale eyes. Because a large number of buildings were damaged, even a part of the formation had disappeared. His white eyes could see the situation there. "Over there, 4th Prince Leihauran's men are fighting. However, they are not fighting with the spirit cultivator, but with the demon we just encountered. In fact, in his vision, Lei Haoran and the others were fighting with the air. Thinking that his Byakugan could not detect demons, he said this. Moreover, judging from the intensity of the battle, they had either encountered a large number of demons or an extremely powerful individual demon. No matter which one it was very attractive to Leng Shiqi. However, he did not want to expose himself in front of Lei Haoran. Furthermore, Delta Origi had also entered. He could not just give him some black gas to take the risk. Thus he said, "Don't worry about them. Let's continue forward." The two of them walked down the road and soon arrived in front of a small palace. During this time they were also ambushed by demons. In the end, of course, they became nourishment for Leng Shiqi's cultivation. He also tested it on Delta Origi, but the black gas did not have any effect on her. This made Leng Shiqi even more certain that the black mark was extremely mysterious. The palace door was tightly shut. The bronze door was engraved with a seemingly chaotic but actually somewhat rhythmic cloud pattern. Leng Shiqi flicked his finger and a starlight shot out from his finger. It shot towards the door, but it was like a clay ox entering the sea. It's a little strange. This bronze door should have a restriction. Let me try. Delta Origi said. Leng Shiqi turned his head and said, "You also learn formations?" "You can say that." Delta Origi smiled mysteriously. Then she directly forced out a few drops of essence blood. The blood continued to expand and formed a bloody light. The bloody light contracted again, and in the blink of an eye, a blurry blood-red figure appeared. Under Delta Origi's control, the figure walked to the bronze door and struck out a series of seals. Streaks of blood climbed up the door and began to slowly devour the cloud pattern on the door. Seeing all of this, Leng Shiqi was very surprised. Delta Origi clearly did not cultivate formations, but she used a secret technique to summon a figure who could make formations to help her break the formation. It was very mysterious. In fact, people like Leng Shiqi, Delta Origi, and even Yushu and Hengming spent all of their time on cultivation. As for formations, alchemy, artifact forging and so on, they were not completely ignorant, but they were not far behind. Their method of cultivation would make their combat power very strong, but it also had some drawbacks. For example, the restriction on the door was not very advanced. If they used force to break the formation, it was possible. However, this would not only expose their location, but it would also consume a lot of spiritual energy. If they knew some formations, it would be much easier. Delta Origi seemed to have found a special method. Leng Shiqi could not help but ask, "What kind of secret technique is this?" As Delta Origi controlled the blood-red figure, she explained with a smug expression, "Do you remember that I told you that I created a secret technique?" With that said, Leng Shiqi remembered that when he invited Delta Origi to join the underworld, Delta Origi asked him for some blood essence, saying that she was researching a secret technique. "This is the secret technique you created." "That's right." Delta Origi nodded. "Currently, I call it the Blood Shadow Secret Technique. I can use the blood essence of a spirit cultivator and some materials to create an existence similar to a clone. This clone can have a part of the original spirit cultivator's abilities. For example, if it is an array master, the blood shadow I condense has the ability to set up and break arrays. However, there are too many factors that affect the strength of the ability. This blood shadow in front of me is the most successful one I have made in a long time. Perhaps it can break the restriction on the door." After hearing these words, Leng Shiqi could not help but admire Delta Origi. This mysterious secret technique was only in its embryonic form, but it was already very powerful. Furthermore, he could see that the potential of the Blood Shadow secret technique was quite great. It could be imagined that if Delta Origi studied this secret technique to the extreme, she could create a large number of experts. This included experts with all kinds of special abilities. Even Leng Shiqi began to covet this Blood Shadow secret technique. However, he suddenly remembered that Delta Origi also took some blood essence from him. What kind of blood shadow would his blood essence condense? He also asked this question curiously, but Delta Origi shook her head gently. "This has to be kept a secret." Chapter 668. Leng Shiqi facepalmed. Delta Origi was still keeping him in suspense. Crack. However, a slight sound attracted their attention. Leng Shiqi looked over and saw that the cloud diagram on the bronze door had a crack. Crack, crack. More and more cracks appeared and soon they covered the bronze door. At the same time, the blood shadow suddenly dimmed and finally disappeared. Delta Origi sighed softly and said, "This is the limit." Looking at these cracks, the restriction on the door should have been mostly broken. Leng Shiqi's body trembled, and his body instantly turned pure gold. Suddenly, a powerful Vajra force burst out. Before he moved, the ground under his feet began to crack. Vajra force. Leng Shiqi punched out and the Vajra force rushed out. At the same time, a dazzling light burst out from his fist. Great bright fist. Boom. With a loud bang, Leng Shiqi used the terrifying power of the Vajra force and the great bright fist to smash the bronze door. However, the scene inside made Leng Shiqi and Delta Origi stunned. This palace did not look big and they did not expect to find anything too precious in it at first. However, what they saw at this moment could only be described with one word, and that was empty. Looking around, the palace was only a few hundred feet in size. There were no decorations or items inside, only a deep pool on the ground. Other than that, there was nothing else. Both of them were a little disappointed. After going through so much trouble, they ended up with nothing. This was a little hard for them to accept. However, it was still necessary to explore. Since this place was protected by a formation, it should be an important place. There might be something hidden or something like a secret room. Leng Shiqi walked around the palace with Byakugan. There was nothing here at all, let alone a secret room. He turned around and found Delta Origi standing in the pool. He was a little lost. Delta Origi would definitely not show such a state for no reason. He also walked to the edge of the pool and looked down. The pool was about 10 feet deep, and there was a thick layer of dark red substance inside. There was a faint smell of blood. This is all dried up blood. There seems to be something in it. Delta Origi muttered. Immediately, she formed a seal with her hands and scattered light into the pool. The dried up blood seemed to come to life and twisted slightly. With a piu sound, a fist-sized lump of blood flew out from it. Delta Origi's face suddenly showed a look of surprise. This is a blood essence soul. Only a Sky Origin stage cultivator can condense the essence blood and soul. Quickly take this item, we didn't come here for nothing. Leng Shiqi consciously gave up the blood essence soul. He believed that after Delta Origi had this item, the blood shadow secret technique would reach a higher level. At first, things went smoothly, but they all thought that this thing was condensed from blood. However, after Delta Origi collected a part of it, they realized that the blood was only a part of the surface. The disappearance of the blood also revealed the original shape of the thing inside. It was a pebble-sized bead. The bead was purple and red in color. There were no patterns on the surface, but there seemed to be endless thunder and flames inside. Just a trace of its aura made Leng Shiqi and Delta Origi tremble in fear. Seeing this bead, he explained to Delta Origi and his pupils shrank. From the shape and aura of the bead, it seemed to be the heavenly thunderfire bead that those princes were fighting for with their lives. According to the information obtained by Leng Shiqi, the heavenly thunderfire bead was the most precious treasure of the Thunderfire dynasty. In terms of grade, it was an existence that surpassed a rank 9 heavenly soldier. Not only did it contain the power of thunder and fire that could destroy heaven and earth, it was also rumored that it contained an ancient secret technique. Back then, the ancestor of the Thunderfire dynasty was able to soar to the heavens because he comprehended the inheritance. More than 1,000 years ago, the Thunderfire dynasty actually had many dynasties existing side by side. Since then, the Thunderfire dynasty had been secretly cultivating experts, suddenly erupting and destroying the surrounding dynasties in one fell swoop, thus establishing the current Thunderfire dynasty. Therefore, it was reasonable for Lei Qingjun to use the heavenly Thunderfire bead as a condition for establishing the crown prince. Leng Shiqi looked at the heavenly Thunderfire bead floating in the air and didn't know what to say. From the beginning, he didn't plan to have any interaction with the princes, let alone look for the heavenly Thunderfire bead. However, things were so strange. Some people couldn't find it even after turning the entire sky upside down, but he accidentally found it. Fate was indeed very interesting. This should be the heavenly Thunderfire bead, right? Delta Origi said in disbelief. Then should we take it or not? Leng Shiqi also pondered for a moment. Since the heavenly Thunderfire bead had appeared, it was only a matter of time before it was discovered. If he secretly sided with one of the princes, it would be fine. However, as a Dark Lightning Guard, he could only remain neutral. In that case, the heavenly Thunderfire bead wouldn't be very useful in his hands. Anyway, he couldn't take the heavenly Thunderfire bead for himself. It wouldn't be bad if he used it to exchange for some benefits with one of the princes. However, at that moment, Leng Shiqi's mind flashed. He looked at the heavenly Thunderfire bead and thought to himself, there might be a way to keep the heavenly Thunderfire bead for himself. A treasure like the Heavenly Thunderfire bead was definitely not something that ordinary people could come into contact with. Lei Qingjun should have placed some restrictions on the Heavenly Thunderfire bead so it was impossible to keep it for himself. However, Leng Shiqi had the system with him. He quickly opened the system shop, trying to find something to collect the Heavenly Thunderfire bead. Unfortunately, he couldn't find anything. Refresh, nothing. Refresh again, still nothing. Refresh again, still nothing. Leng Shiqi couldn't help but feel a little pity. He had such a treasure in his hands, but he couldn't get any benefits, which made him feel unreconciled. Just as he was about to put the Heavenly Thunderfire bead into the system space, his hand suddenly paused, because he accidentally found something in the system space. It was a prize he had drawn a long time ago when he was in the Western Wilderness Prefecture, the Faceless Shambler card. The function of this card was that it could be perfectly copied into something else. He quickly took out the card, and with a turn of his spiritual power, the card turned into a gray ball of light, and condensed into a bead at a speed visible to the naked eye. It was actually exactly the same as the Heavenly Thunderfire bead. Leng Shiqi held the replicated bead in his hand. Whether it was the shape, color, or the spiritual power inside, it was exactly the same. He was extremely happy. This Heavenly Thunderfire bead was definitely a treasure that surpassed the 9th stage. If he could get one for free, he would definitely make a fortune. However, when the two Heavenly Thunderfire pearls came close to each other, they actually produced an extremely strong repulsive force, causing the two Heavenly Thunderfire pearls to erupt at the same time, instantly turning the small palace into ashes. Chapter 669. Fortunately, Leng Shiqi and Delta Origi were very good at protecting themselves. They weren't injured, but they looked a little embarrassed. Leng Shiqi was surprised, but he also felt that something was wrong. Such a loud noise would definitely attract other people. He quickly shouted, "I'll send you to the underworld. Don't resist." Then he reached out with his psychic power, and Delta Origi's figure disappeared without a trace. With his invincible Vajra divine art, he was not afraid of the destructive thunder fire. He reached out and grabbed the two Heavenly Thunderfire pearls. However, the berserk power still caused cracks to appear on his golden palm. He put away the Heavenly Thunderfire pearls and was about to leave when a shout came from afar. "Who are you? Hand over the Heavenly Thunderfire pearls." Leng Shiqi knew that something was wrong. He was planning to hide in the underworld for a while. At most, he could wait for 2 days and then leave Scar Sky. Unfortunately, he was still a step too late. However, following that person's shout, a few other people had already noticed him and recognized him. "He's Lu Xingji, stop him." Lei Haoran also noticed Leng Shiqi. His eyes flashed with madness and greed as he shouted, "Lu Xingji, hand over the Heavenly Thunderfire pearls. I'll guarantee you a high position, second only to one person." Leng Shiqi also stopped thinking about hiding in the underworld. He wasn't moved by Lei Haoran's words. He wanted to use this opportunity to gather all the people who were preparing to assassinate him and then kill them all in one fell swoop. He smiled and shook his head. "Fourth Highness, I didn't get the Heavenly Thunderfire pearls. You misunderstood." In the time it took to say these 2 sentences, Lei Haoran and the other experts had already approached. He said with a dark face, "Do you think we're all idiots? That power just now contained the extreme power of Thunderfire. It must be the Heavenly Thunderfire pearls. I don't care how you entered the Cloud Tower Demon Palace. Since you can become the Deputy Chief of the Dark Thunder Guards, you must have some brains. I advise you to be smart and hand over the Heavenly Thunderfire pearls. In the future, the position of the Dark Thunder Guards commander will be yours. Otherwise, don't blame me for being ruthless." However, when Leng Shiqi heard Lei Haoran's words, he felt even more relaxed. Lei Haoran's words were ruthless enough, but the more he spoke, the more it meant that he did not dare to kill Leng Shiqi. This was because Leng Shiqi was the vice director of the Dark Thunder Guards. This was a position that was second only to the commander and the 4 directors. He was the true leader of the Dark Thunder Guards. Even if Leng Shiqi was a deputy director with no real power, he was still a deputy director. Not to mention Lei Haoran, even if he really became the crown prince, he wouldn't be able to touch the deputy director of the Dark Thunder Guards. After all, the Dark Thunder Guards were directly under Lei Qingjun and had countless secrets and intelligence. If Lei Haoran really dared to kill Leng Shiqi, then he would have no chance at the throne. If Leng Shiqi was still an imperial supervisor, Lei Haoran might have already made a move. He wouldn't even bother talking nonsense with Leng Shiqi. However, the person standing behind Lei Haoren sighed slightly. He could already see that Lei Haoren's heart was in chaos. Usually, Lei Haoren was a scheming person. Now that he had found the heavenly Thunderfire Pearl, it meant that he was only one step away from the throne. No matter how shrewd Lei Haoren was, he still couldn't control his emotions. This way he would be easily swayed by others. Lung Shiqi continued to shake his head and said, "Your Highness, I have already said that I didn't find the heavenly Thunderfire Pearl. Just now it was just a commotion caused by breaking the formation here. Besides, has your Highness or anyone else seen the heavenly Thunderfire Pearl before? Why do you think that it was caused by the heavenly Thunderfire Pearl?" Everyone was speechless. No one had really seen the heavenly Thunderfire Pearl before. In the history of the Thunderfire dynasty, the last time this treasure appeared was hundreds of years ago. The people standing here weren't even born yet. Lung Shiqi stubbornly refused to admit it. He was still a deputy director. There was really nothing you could do about him. Lei Haoren's face was so gloomy that it was about to drip water. If he delayed here any longer, it might attract Lei Haoqing or Lei Haoyun. At that time, the situation would be even worse. He became more and more anxious. He said to Lung Shiqi, "Fine, your words are not proof. As long as you hand over your mustard seed bracelet and let me check it, I won't make things difficult for you if there really isn't the heavenly Thunderfire Pearl." Lung Shiqi's face also turned cold. "Your Highness, the mustard seed bracelet is my privacy. Isn't your Highness going too far?" Lei Haoren opened his mouth to refute, but the person behind him stopped him. "Lord Lu, I am Wei Ruishi. As far as I know, the Dark Thunder Guards are not allowed to participate in the fight between factions. In fact, we have no conflict. If Lord Lu really does find the heavenly Thunderfire Pearl, feel free to state your conditions. As long as they are not unreasonable, I believe His Highness will agree. Of course, if this is all a misunderstanding, after checking Lord Lu's mustard seed bracelet, His Highness will also give Lord Lu generous compensation. Moreover, only His Highness the Fourth Prince will check it. He will definitely not treat Lord Lu badly." At the same time, Wei Ruishi was also secretly winking at Lei Haoren. Lei Haoren also realized that he had been too impulsive just now. He cupped his hands at Lung Shiqi and said, "Yes, I was rude just now. As long as Lord Lu is willing to give me the heavenly Thunderfire Pearl or let me check your mustard seed bracelet, you can state your conditions." Lung Shiqi pretended to hesitate for a while before saying, "It's not impossible to check my mustard seed bracelet, but your Highness must first give me a 7th grade precious weapon." A 7th grade precious weapon? How could a 7th grade precious weapon be taken so easily? Even if Lei Haoren was powerful and rich, the number of 7th grade precious weapons in his hands could be counted on one hand. Moreover, in order to win over the spirit cultivators, he had given them away. Lei Haoren was already cursing in his heart. What a big appetite. Seeing that Lei Haoren did not respond, Lung Shiqi said, "Since your Highness does not have this sincerity, then forget it. In any case, I really did not find the heavenly Thunderfire Pearl. Your Highness, there is no need to lose a 7th grade precious weapon for a possibility. It's not worth it." Was it worth it? If it was in normal times, of course not. But this was the heavenly Thunderfire Pearl, which was directly related to the throne. Even if it was only a possibility, it was worth it. Lei Haoren's molars were about to fall off. He forcibly suppressed the anger in his heart and said softly to Wei Ruishi, "Mr. Wei, I'm sorry." Wei Ruishi said, "Your Highness, don't say that." Then he took out a green feather fan. This is a 7th grade precious weapon, the green feather wind forest fan. It contains the power of gale and cotton at the same time. If Lord Lu is willing to hand over the mustard seed bracelet, it will be yours regardless of whether you have the heavenly Thunderfire Pearl or not. Lung Shiqi's expression kept changing. In the end, he reluctantly nodded and said, "Okay, but you have to give me the green feather wind forest fan first." Wei Ruishi glanced at Lei Haoren. Seeing him nod slightly, Wei Ruishi threw the green feather wind forest fan over. Lung Shiqi looked troubled. He sighed slightly and was forced to take off his mustard seed bracelet. Chapter 670. Lei Haoren took Lung Shiqi's mustard seed bracelet and checked it carefully. Most of the items in it were spiritual stones. At a glance, there were over 1,000,000 of them. In addition, there were a lot of level 5 and level 6 elixirs, materials and spiritual weapons. There were even 2 level 7 precious weapons, namely the bloodstained Star Devil Saber and the 10 Directions Floating Snow Spear. These 2 weapons were known to outsiders, so Lung Shiqi didn't hide them. Only the Fox Lotus Bow and a lot of level 7 and level 8 materials were transferred to the system space. Lei Haoran was shocked by Leng Shiqi's wealth. Not to mention the Gang Spirit realm, even a supreme power in the oneness of heaven and men realm might not have such wealth. And a level 7 precious weapon couldn't be bought with money. Of course, Lei Haoran didn't care about how much wealth Leng Shiqi had. He cared more about the heavenly thunderfire bead. However, he turned Leng Shiqi's mustard seed bracelet upside down and didn't find the heavenly thunderfire bead. The heavenly thunderfire bead is really not with him. Lei Haoran suddenly felt a little absent-minded. Seeing his expression, Leng Shiqi knew the result. It seems that your highness didn't find the heavenly thunderfire bead in it, which proves that what I said is true. Your highness, please give the bracelet back to me. Goodbye. Lei Haoran immediately looked at Leng Shiqi with a gloomy face and growled in a hoarse voice, I don't believe it. You must have other mustard seed bracelets. Take them out. Leng Shiqi didn't give him a good look and snorted, Your highness, don't go too far. As a prince, it's immoral to break your promise. Wei Ruishi answered, Your highness didn't break your promise. We agreed to check Mr. Lu's mustard seed bracelets. Of course, I mean all of them. What a good way to raise the price. Well, I'm a lowly man, so I can only yield to your highness's majesty. Leng Shiqi sneered and threw out a few mustard seed bracelets. Take them and look at them. Lei Haoran was a little flustered as he took all the mustard seed bracelets. Upon closer inspection there were actually 6 of them. He couldn't care about anything else and hurriedly checked them one by one. However, the more he looked, the uglier his expression became. No. Still nothing. If Leng Shiqi only had one mustard seed bracelet, Lei Haoran would be very disappointed that he didn't find the heavenly thunderfire bead. He would also lose the green feather wind forest fan because of this. However, Leng Shiqi had given him several mustard seed bracelets, which was equivalent to giving him hope. Then that hope turned into disappointment. This psychological gap almost drove Lei Haoran crazy. Wei Ruishi was afraid that Lei Haoran would go crazy. He transmitted his voice, Your Highness, if Lu Xingji really doesn't have the heavenly thunderfire bead, we can't do anything to him. After all, he's the deputy general manager. Lei Haoran wanted nothing more than to tear Leng Shiqi into pieces. However, he was also very clear about the situation. He took a deep breath to calm himself down and put on a very stiff smile. Mr. Lu, so it was all a misunderstanding. These mustard seed bracelets are returned as they were. As the saying goes, no discord, no concord. The green feather wind forest fan is a meeting gift for Mr. Lu. Leng Shiqi took back his mustard seed bracelet and cupped his fists. In that case, this humble subject thanks your highness. The 9th prince and the 13th prince are coming. In order to avoid more misunderstandings, this humble subject will take his leave first. After saying this, he didn't go to explore the Yunlu Demon Palace. Instead, he turned and left. He could use his status as the deputy general manager to make Lei Haoran wary, but he might not be able to make the 3 princes wary. It was better to leave this place as soon as possible. Moreover, he had the heavenly thunderfire bead, which meant that he had the absolute initiative. For the next 2 days, Scar Sky would be his home ground. After leaving the Yunlu Demon Palace, Leng Shiqi opened the system map. There were a total of 6 or 7 places marked with abnormal spiritual energy. The Yunlu Demon Palace was one of them. He was deep in thought. Now, he needed to choose one of these places as the location where the heavenly thunderfire bead would appear. At first, he planned to sell the heavenly thunderfire bead through an auction. However, after thinking about it, if he really dared to take the heavenly thunderfire bead out in the open, he would probably be killed by the princes. He couldn't just court death like that. It was better to use the heavenly thunderfire bead to lure everyone here. If the princes wanted to kill him, he couldn't be bothered. He was more concerned about the people who were coming to kill him. As long as everyone came, the assassins hidden in the dark would naturally be among them. At that time, Leng Shiqi would have a way to catch them all in one fell swoop. He looked at the system map. Before he entered Scar Sky, he had obtained some information. There were a few dangerous places in Scar Sky that ordinary people didn't dare to approach. For example, the Wailing Forest, the Crack of the Abyss, the Annihilation Maze, and so on. Leng Shiqi looked at these dangerous places and finally chose the Yellow Mud Swamp. The swamp was not dangerous to spirit cultivators. Not to mention the 4 realms of heaven, even spirit transformation realm spirit cultivators could easily break free from the swamp's binding force. However, the Yellow Mud Swamp in Scar Sky was an exception. This place was very strange. First of all, The swamp was over 100 miles wide and had a terrifying suction force. If that was the case, it wouldn't be a big deal. Those who could enter Scar Sky were all spirit astral realm experts. With powerful spirit astral realm cultivators, they could break free from the suction force. What was even more terrifying was that the suction force could even suck away the spirit chi in a spirit cultivator's body. This also meant that in addition to the consumption of spirit chi in battle, a part of one's spirit chi had to be sucked away at all times. Therefore one could not stay in there for too long. Other than that, there were also some monsters hidden in the swamp. They were not very strong, but in that unique environment they could still cause a lot of trouble. Lung Shiqi decided to go there. However, he was not in a hurry to go to the Yellow Mud Swamp because the Delta Origi was still in the underworld and did not know the situation outside. He found a remote place and teleported into the underworld. In the underworld, the Delta Origi was leisurely walking around like a tourist. When she saw Lung Shiqi return in one piece, she knew that he was out of danger. "This is the underworld you were talking about? It's really strange. By the way, I think Yushu and Xiongming are a little strange. What happened to them?" Speaking of this, Lung Shiqi was also a little puzzled. The Delta Origi had entered the underworld long ago, so why didn't they get the inheritance like Yushu and the others? Just as Lung Shiqi was about to speak, Fengdu City blossomed with a bloody light that bathed the Delta Origi. An ancient voice sounded, "Conferred, Yuanyang Mingyu Ghost Emperor." The Delta Origi immediately entered a meditative state like Yushu and Xiongming. Lung Shiqi was already used to this kind of thing. However, he seemed to have sensed something and suddenly raised his head. It turned out that a mournful blood moon had appeared in the sky above the underworld. Chapter 671. Since the birth of the Mansion of the Dead, other than Lung Shiqi, there had been 3 people who had been conferred the title. They were Xidagarba King Tuding, Qingguang King Yushu, and Pingdeng King Xiongming. However, after these 3 people received the inheritance, the Mansion of the Dead did not change. However, when Delta Origi was conferred the title of Ghost Emperor Yuanyang Mingyu, it caused a change in the Mansion of the Dead, and a blood moon appeared. Moreover, Lung Shiqi did not remember that there was a Ghost Emperor Yuanyang Mingyu in the Mansion of the Dead, only the Ghost Emperors of the 5 directions. He pondered for a long time. It seemed that the Mansion of the Dead did not follow the same path as in his previous life. However, this was also good. For example, the inheritance obtained by Delta Origi was definitely the most suitable for her. Since the 3 people had entered the state of cultivation, Lung Shiqi did not disturb them. He left the Mansion of the Dead and directly used the Fate skill to teleport to the vicinity of the Yellow Mud Swamp. In the Cloud Tower Demon Palace, not long after Lung Shiqi left, the 9th Prince Lei Haoqing and the 13th Prince Lei Haoyun hurried over. They asked Lei Haoran at the same time, "Where is the Thunderfire Pearl?" Lei Haoran felt as uncomfortable as if he had eaten a fly. Facing these 2 people who had been secretly fighting to the death for a long time, he no longer hid himself. He shouted, "There is no heavenly Thunderfire Pearl here, scram." Lei Haoqing also said bluntly, "Nonsense, there was the power of Thunderfire just now. If you don't know what's good for you, 13th brother, and I don't mind eliminating you now." Lei Haoran's overall strength was similar to Lei Haoyun's, but with Lei Haoqing, it was completely different, especially with the support of the top sect Thousand Illusion Sword sect behind Lei Haoqing. The 3 people who came in were all at the peak of the spirit astral realm and were very strong. Before the Cloud Tower Demon Palace, he and Lei Haoqing wanted to join forces to stop Lei Haoyun, but in the blink of an eye the situation was reversed. Lei Haoyun did not say much nonsense. He waved his hand and the spirit cultivators behind him slowly approached. Lei Haoran suddenly understood Lung Shiqi's feelings a little, but the difference was that he could not explain himself. Even if he did not admit it, the other party would not believe him. A battle seemed to be inevitable. "You 2 idiots, if you want to swallow me, be careful not to break all your teeth. Do you really want to fight to the death now and let Big Brother take advantage of you? The Heavenly Thunderfire Pearl is not here. If I had really obtained the Heavenly Thunderfire Pearl, would I have waited here for you to come? Use your brain." Lei Haoqing and Lei Haoyun hesitated. What Lei Haoran said made sense. However, it was impossible for them to let Lei Haoran leave just like that. After all, Lei Haoran could be lying. Lei Haoran hardened his heart and said sullenly, "Since you don't believe me, then we can only fight. After all, the throne is Big Brother's. Sooner or later, you will have to come down and accompany me." Lei Haoyun pondered for a moment, then suggested, "Fourth brother, it's not that we don't want to believe you. On the contrary, we all hope that you didn't get the heavenly Thunderfire Pearl. In that case, at the very least, we all have a chance. To be honest, among the few of us, Big Brother is still the strongest. We just happened to be here and didn't find the heavenly Thunderfire Pearl. Why don't we take this opportunity to join forces?" When he said this, Lei Haoqing and Lei Haoran's hearts skipped a beat. That's right, in terms of strength, the first prince Lei Haoyan was definitely the strongest. Lei Haoyan himself was a great master of the unity of heaven and man realm. This time he entered the void scar sky because of a restriction. At most, he could only exert the cultivation of the peak of the spirit astral realm. Once he exceeded this limit, he would immediately be excluded from the void scar sky and lose the qualifications to compete. However, he was still a genuine unity of heaven and man realm. Even if his cultivation was restricted, an ordinary late-stage spirit astral realm was no match for him. Moreover, Lei Haoyan was not only surrounded by the spirit cultivator sects that he had roped in, but also the various generals' mansions that supported him. These people had all fought their way back from countless battlefields. Their fighting strength far exceeded that of spirit cultivators of the same level, and their numbers were also the largest. Therefore, Lei Haoyan was the one that they feared the most. Joining forces was indeed a good choice. Now, these three people were hostile to each other and wary of each other, but they also wanted to join forces to eliminate Lei Haoyan first. This time they could not fight, but they could not avoid a war of words. At this time, Leng Shiqi had already arrived at the yellow mud swamp. He floated in the air with 4 wings behind him. With a glance, he saw hundreds of monsters that looked like large loaches in the swamp. He narrowed his eyes and opened his hand. He didn't seem to use any spiritual technique, but the swamp under his feet suddenly exploded and surged wildly like a wave. Phew! Leng Shiqi withdrew his palm and breathed a sigh of relief. The corner of his mouth also raised a smile. Here it is. Then, a formation plate and dozens of small yellow formation flags appeared in his hand. This was a 6th-level formation he found after refreshing the system store, the Earth Mixing Formation. This was a trap formation which was enough to trap dozens of spirit astral realm masters. With a wave of his arm, all the formation flags scattered, arranged in strange positions and finally disappeared. Leng Shiqi held the formation plate in his hand and muttered something. The formation plate suddenly became extremely heavy, and he sank it into the deep swamp. After arranging all this, Leng Shiqi hid in the swamp and then teleported into the Mansion of the Dead. In the Mansion of the Dead, Delta Origi and the others seemed to be showing signs of waking up. Leng Shiqi also sat down and took out black grass and placed it in front of him. He picked up one of them, and a faint black stream of air was absorbed by the black mark in the spirit crystal. He planned to cultivate in the Mansion of the Dead for a while. Although he had found the heavenly Thunderfire Pearl and made arrangements, he did not plan to start his plan now. Calculating the time, it had only been a day since the Void Scar opened. If he let the heavenly Thunderfire Pearl appear so early, no matter who got it first, they would become the target of public criticism. At that time, there would only be countless fierce battles, and they might even fight until 2 days later. This way, the situation would be completely out of his control. He planned to expose the heavenly Thunderfire Pearl in the last few hours, so that everything would go according to his plan. Before that, he had to do his best to increase his strength. These black grass were a shortcut for him to improve his cultivation. Time passed very quickly but also very slowly. A day and a half passed just like that. To Leng Shiqi it was like sleeping, and it passed by in the blink of an eye. However, to Lei Haoyan and the other princes, every moment was incomparably torturous. They had already been searching in the Void Scar for 2.5 days, but they had not even seen the shadow of the heavenly Thunderfire Pearl. From the beginning, they only wanted to find the heavenly Thunderfire Pearl as quickly as possible. Even if someone else found it, they would just snatch it. They had never thought about what would happen if no one found the heavenly Thunderfire Pearl. Would all the princes lose the right to inherit the throne? They did not want to believe it in their hearts, but thinking about it, if you can't even find a single pearl, you are too useless. What right do you have to inherit the throne? Time passed bit by bit. When there were only 6 to 8 hours left, a shocking power suddenly burst out, shaking the entire Void Scar sky. All the spirit cultivators looked in the same direction. There, the light of the heavenly Thunderfire Pearl soared into the sky, dyeing half the sky. As long as they saw this scene, their expressions were filled with shock and joy. They knew that the heavenly Thunderfire Pearl had finally appeared. Chapter 672. The first Prince Lei Haoyan was wearing a battle armor, revealing only a pair of bloodshot eyes. He looked at the place where the heavenly thunderfire pearl appeared, and his eyes shot out beams of light. "Where is that?" "Your Highness, that should be the yellow mud swamp. Prepare for battle." "Yes." The fourth Prince Lei Haoyan murmured, "The heavenly thunderfire pearl is really not with Lu Xingji. Let's go to the yellow mud swamp quickly, don't let others take the initiative." The ninth Prince Lei Haoqing said solemnly, "Elder Yin will rely on you later." "Your Highness, don't worry. I'm not bragging. Among these people, except for the first prince, I don't put anyone in my eyes." If Leng Shiqi was here, he would recognize that this person was Yen Mu, who he met at the Divine Forge Peak. Yen Mu was also there to forge weapons, but he was stopped at the door by Leng Shiqi. It seemed that he got what he wanted in the end. The 13th Prince Lei Haoyan was not in a good mood. "Father clearly hinted that the heavenly thunderfire pearl was in the Cloud Demon Palace, and I tried every means to get the key to enter. I thought it was a sure thing, but the heavenly thunderfire pearl was not there. Father, what is your purpose in doing this?" All the forces and spirit cultivators of Void Scar Sky were rushing to the yellow mud swamp. Even if they knew it was a dangerous place, they still rushed to it. For the princes, this place would determine whether they would become an emperor or a skeleton in the future. For those who followed the princes, whether they would have a meteoric rise or be eradicated as a henchman, they would also get the result here. As for those who remained neutral, they were not necessarily neutral. Some of them already had masters, waiting for the critical moment to jump out, and some were waiting until the last moment to see who had the highest chance of winning before deciding who to side with. There were not many who were truly neutral. Soon after, all the forces gathered at the yellow mud swamp. Everyone was a spirit astral realm master, and more or less had the ability to deal with the strange suction force here. Moreover, with so many experts gathered together, just the pressure of spiritual gang released made the monsters in the swamp not dare to come out. In the yellow mud swamp, the four princes were scattered in all directions, looking up at the heavenly thunderfire pearl in the sky. As for the rest, they were scattered at the back, and Leng Shiqi was one of them. At this moment, Leng Shiqi's cultivation was already at the 6th level of Gang Spirit Realm, and the peak of Gang Spirit Realm level 6. For more than a day, he had been refining the black grass non-stop. This thing wasn't like elixirs, which would leave behind impurities and couldn't be refined for a long time. The black mark on his spirit crystal was like a bottomless pit, absorbing the power of this black grass and eventually transforming it into his own spiritual power. Now there were only about 300 stalks of black grass left. In fact, Leng Shiqi still had time to refine them all. However, from the 6th to the 7th level of Gang Spirit Realm, there was a barrier between the middle stage and the late stage. He was afraid that the remaining grass was not enough to break through. Moreover, the major event was imminent, so he held back and did not break through by force. The four princes looked at the heavenly thunderfire pearl with red eyes, but they were not in a hurry to make a move, because the heavenly thunderfire pearl was still surrounded by terrible thunder and fire. Even if they were far away, they could only stand here safely by supporting their gang spirit. It could be said that no one could easily get close to the heavenly thunderfire pearl. However, the thunder and fire all over the sky were slowly dissipating. They just needed to wait for a while. Of course, that would be the time when the battle really began. And such a terrible movement was actually caused by Leng Shiqi using the two heavenly thunderfire pearls to repel each other. Now that he had led everyone here, he quietly opened his supercilious eyes to observe everyone around him. Sure enough, he found that many people were glancing at him faintly. Leng Shiqi roughly estimated that there were more than 30 people. He had to secretly admire Li Jueqing. What a big deal. It should be known that these people were not ordinary people. Those who could enter Air Scar Sky all had a strong background and powerful strength. God knew how much Li Jueqing had spent to bribe more than 30 masters to besiege and kill him. However, Leng Shiqi was a little puzzled. Li Jueqing should have guessed that Li Juning's death had something to do with him. Since even the real oneness of heaven and men realm couldn't kill him, more than 30 masters of Gang Spirit Realm might not be able to do it. Li Jueqing would not fight a battle unprepared, which could be seen from Li Juning's various weapons. Therefore, Leng Shiqi dared to conclude that these people who came to kill him also had some unexpected trump cards. Even if he had made a backup plan, he still couldn't underestimate anyone. Time passed little by little, and the power of thunder and fire in the sky gradually dissipated. After about half an hour, a person finally moved. He was the eldest prince, Lei Haoyan. With a single leap, Lei Haoyan leaped 1,000 feet into the air. At this time, the power of the thunder fire hadn't completely dissipated, but Lei Haoyan relied on his powerful body and armor to force his way into the thunder fire and grab the thunder fire heavenly pearl. The other three princes' expressions changed greatly. None of them expected Lei Haoyan's strength to be so strong that he took the initiative in a moment of carelessness. Lei Haoyan shouted in a low voice, "Old 9, old 13, what are you still hesitating for? You have seen Lei Haoyan's strength. He alone is equivalent to 10 people. If we don't join forces, we won't have a chance." Lei Haoqing nodded slightly. Yan Mu, who was beside him, suddenly drew his sword. The dreamy sword light with amazing sword intent swept in all directions and directly killed Lei Haoyan's subordinates. Yan Mu's sword light was arrogant, and for a moment, no one could stop him. Leng Shiqi was also a little surprised. Last time he had fought with Yan Mu on Shinduan Mountain. At that time, Yan Mu did not really use his sword. Now that he had a 7th grade sword in his hand, he could display the strength of the Thousand Illusion Sword sect. Wei Ruishi, who was on Lei Haoyan's side, formed a spiritual seal with his hand. In an instant, a fierce wind blew and the sky changed color. Lei Haoyan waved his hand gently, and the 12 gang spirit realm experts behind him formed a formation. Each of them used a different spiritual weapon, and like a meat grinder they rushed into Lei Haoyan's group. Lei Haoyan's subordinates bore the brunt of the attack and several of them died. They were extremely shocked. The 3 of them actually joined forces. Quickly form a battle formation. We must hold them back. Your Highness, leave quickly. Lei Haoyan had just obtained the heavenly thunder fire pearl and thought that the situation was settled. But the situation became one-sided in an instant. He did not know when Lei Haoyan and the other 2 had met and secretly joined forces. He quickly made a decision, and that was to escape. As long as he could hold on for 3 days, he would naturally leave Skyscar and obtain the position of the Crown Prince. Chapter 673. Thinking of this, Lei Haoyan rushed out like a cannonball as soon as he landed. No, he's going to escape. Elder Yen, stop him. Mr. Wei, it's up to you. Lei Haoyan said to a black-robed man next to him, act according to the plan. The strongest men of the other 3 princes left the battlefield at the same time and chased after Lei Haoyan crazily, while the rest were killing Lei Haoyan's supporters. Leng Shiqi touched his chin. He thought that the 4 princes would fight here, and he didn't expect that Lei Haoqing and the other 2 had secretly joined hands. In fact, they could join hands more or less because of Leng Shiqi, but he didn't know it. He said to himself, although it's a little unexpected, it's still under my control. Then he looked around for a while and left quickly in the opposite direction of Lei Haoyan. As soon as he left, a series of changes took place. Some people who were still watching quietly left, and some deliberately left a few words. The ownership of the Thunderfire Pearl has nothing to do with me anyway. It's better to explore more treasures. That's right. There's not much time left. Let's go. Li Gang and Gong Lianghui in the crowd also looked at each other and silently followed Leng Shiqi. Leng Shiqi had already noticed that there were many people following behind him, and he laughed in his heart. The yellow mud swamp was very large with a radius of hundreds of miles. The Thunderfire Pearl was in the north, and he was walking to the center of the yellow mud swamp at this time. That was the place where he set up the formation. The reason why he didn't put the Thunderfire Pearl in the center of the yellow mud swamp was that he was afraid that the formation masters among the spirit cultivators would notice it. And once the Thunderfire Pearl appeared, there would definitely be a fierce battle, and maybe his formation would be accidentally destroyed. Leng Shiqi walked to the center and more people were following him. When he came to the center of the yellow mud swamp, there were already 37 gang spirit realm masters following him. Suddenly Leng Shiqi stopped and sneered, "Everyone, why are you following me so hard?" The people behind him said, "Who's following you? We'll go our own way and you go yours. Who cares about you?" Exactly. It was just on the way. There were also people who agreed. Leng Shiqi said sarcastically, "This is the yellow mud swamp. Normal people don't dare to enter and there are no treasures here. Every single one of you has a high status, yet you actually said such laughable words. What exactly is your purpose?" As they spoke, more than a dozen people had already circled behind the Leng Shiqi. At this time they no longer concealed themselves. Li Gang raised his head and said, "Lu Xingji, there's no harm in telling you that this yellow mud marsh will be your burial ground. Don't blame us." If you want to blame someone, blame yourself for not knowing how to appreciate favors and offending someone you shouldn't have. You've finally revealed your foxtail. However, you think trash like you can kill me? Aren't you dreaming? Lung Shiqi continued to mock and ridicule. It was as if he did not place the experts in his eyes at all. When he said this, everyone glared at him. Gong Lianghui stepped forward and said, Lu Xingji, we know you're strong. Do you think we're unprepared? Everyone hurry up. Before Gong Lianghui's voice died away, the 37 masters of Gang Spirit Realm threw out something at the same time. Looking carefully, it was a blue nail which was more than 1 foot long. The icy force on it could be felt from a distance. Immediately, all the blue nails suddenly burst open. Icy threads appeared and intertwined with each other to form a huge ice net. The area within a radius of several miles suddenly became a world of ice and snow, and the cold wind was biting. Gong Lianghui laughed. Lu Xingji, you have the golden earth dragon flame in your body, which is really powerful. But each ice thread is weaved by the 1,000-year-old ice silkworm, exhausting its vitality. Don't show off your golden earth dragon flame. Lung Shiqi's face darkened. Last time when Li Juning came to kill him, he was wearing an ice thread cold suit. This time he directly made a huge net. The golden earth dragon flame in his body became a little sluggish. It seemed that it really couldn't play any role. But he still disdained. This preparation is not enough. You're so stubborn. Li Gang snorted and took out a piece of talisman paper. After muttering something, he pasted it on his forehead. In an instant, Li Gang's aura suddenly changed, from the middle stage of Gang Spirit Realm directly to the peak of Gang Spirit Realm. No, it was stronger than the peak of Gang Spirit Realm. It was clearly the half-step oneness of Heaven and Men Realm. What was more terrible was that Li Gang's aura was no longer Li Gang's. A layer of faint gray light rose around him and wrapped him up. From the appearance, it seemed that he had become another person. That was Li Juj, the master of oneness of Heaven and Men Realm of Li family of Dark Thunder Guard. Gong Lianghui also made the same move. His aura was better than Li Juj's. He was the 4th uncle of Li family. This change even surprised others. This is the spirit adhesion skill. The kind of forbidden skill that consumes the cultivation and lifespan of both sides. Yes, from their appearance, they are the 2 masters of oneness of Heaven and Men Realm of Li family. It is said that the 4th uncle is old, but he still dares to use such a forbidden skill. No matter what the result is today, I'm afraid he doesn't have much time left. Director Li really paid a lot in order to kill Lu Xingji. Li Gang said, and his voice also changed, today you must die. His voice sounded a little stiff, but his tone could make people feel cold all over. Li Juj flicked his finger, and a red spiritual gang directly tore the air and hit Lung Shiqi's heart. The sound of spiritual gang cutting through the air was unbearable. At the same time, Gong Lianghui chopped down with his hand. Suddenly, thunder spiritual gang broke out, and the sky and the earth were full of the power of thunder and lightning. In terms of power, it was not weaker than the previous heavenly thunderfire bead. The 4th uncle himself was at the late stage of oneness of Heaven and Men Realm, so his strength was naturally better than Li Juj's. Their spiritual bodies were attached to Li Gang and Gong Lianghui. Although they could only exert the cultivation of Gang Spirit Realm, their strength was very close to oneness of Heaven and Men Realm. In the face of such a terrible attack, Lung Shiqi smiled strangely. Then he made a gesture with his hands. In an instant the surrounding earth shook, and a burst of thick earth power gushed out, rushing to the sky. In the blink of an eye, the earth matrix appeared, condensing into dozens of stone rooms to cover everyone. The attack of Li Juj and the 4th uncle also hit the stone wall that suddenly appeared. To their shock, such power only made a few cracks on the stone wall. If they wanted to break the stone wall, they had to attack several times in a row. If they were like this, the others would be trapped in it for the time being. Chapter 674. 4th uncle and Li Juj were separated, but they could know each other's location with their strong perception. There is a formation here. Li Juj transmitted the voice with disbelief. 4th uncle frowned deeply and said, it's a trapping formation of the earth system with strong defensive power. Even we can't break it in a short time. There is no formation in the yellow mud swamp at all. Lu Xingji may have arranged it in advance. What should we do? If Lu Xingji escapes at this time, we can't use the spirit adhesion again. We can't kill him by relying on others. He can set up the formation in advance and lead us out. I'm afraid he has already guessed that we are going to kill him. He is too terrible. We must kill him or there will be endless troubles. Break the formation quickly. They were very anxious at this time. The spirit adhesion was a forbidden art. Even if they were in the realm of oneness of heaven and men, they could not maintain it for a long time. If Leng Shiqi took the opportunity to escape, they would probably lose all their previous efforts. However, they did not know that Leng Shiqi did not want to escape at all. In a stone room of the earth-mixing formation, a one-eyed man in the middle stage of Gang Spirit realm was constantly bombarding the stone wall with Gang Spirit of wood. Suddenly, a monster with 4 arms drilled out of the stone wall. A dark devil saber was chopped out, and the evil spirit was so violent that it seemed that the gate of hell was opened. The one-eyed man just reacted, but his mind was eroded by the amazing evil spirit. After one slash, his body and head were cut into 2. The first one, Leng Shiqi murmured, and then drilled into another stone room. In the outside world, everyone remained the same, quietly looking at the place where the jade plates were placed. After some people died in succession at the beginning, it became quiet. Only a few people died on the last day. They also guessed that the people inside had not found the heavenly thunder bead, otherwise it would not be so quiet. But at this time 4 or 5 jade plates suddenly broke at the same time. Moreover, these jade tablets were placed together. A little eunuch immediately picked up the jade plate. After seeing the name on it, his hands trembled. Cheji Field Officer Peng Ming dead. North Town Thunder Flame Army Deputy General Yun Zhuo dead. Jinshi Marshal Mansion Vanguard Wu Yingzong dead. He read out a few names in succession and the audience immediately buzzed. The people who had died were all from the military. Furthermore, they were all followers of the Crown Prince, Lei Haoyan. Everyone could roughly guess what had happened in Space Scar Sky. Lei Haoyan must have been the first to find the heavenly Thunderfire Pearl and then been attacked. Soon after, a few more jade tablets shattered. There were people from Lei Haoran, Lei Haoqing and Lei Haoyan inside. Presumably, they had already started fighting over the heavenly Thunderfire bead. Everyone stared at the jade tablet, trying to deduce the situation inside Void Scar Sky. However, the little eunuch's words made them a little puzzled. Guyu, a disciple of the first-rate sect, Wuwei Pavilion, has fallen. Martial Might Pavilion? Many people were puzzled. I have some impression of this Guyu. He seems to be one-eyed. They had more or less inquired about the Martial Might Pavilion. It was a neutral sect and did not rely on any prince. Then why did Guyu die? Maybe he's fighting for other treasures. Don't worry about him. That's true. The final owner of the heavenly Thunderfire Pearl is the most important thing. They did not intend to think too much about it. However, the little eunuch's voice rang out again. Tan Heyu, a disciple of the first-rate sect, Xiantian Square, has fallen. Another disciple of a neutral sect had been killed. At first, not many people paid attention to it. However, the little eunuch continued to say a few more names. They were all disciples of neutral sects. The strange thing was that the jade tablets shattered in a rather orderly manner. Every few breaths one would shatter. Occasionally there would be the jade tablets of the 4 princes mixed in. This situation was completely out of everyone's expectations. It could be said that it was the complete opposite of what they had expected. In just a short while, more than 20 people had already fallen. Perhaps these people were intentionally neutral. In fact, they had already secretly sided with one of the princes. Now that they had appeared, they were caught off guard. But they shouldn't have died so quickly. They were all at the spirit astral realm. It's not like they were pigs. Everyone had a huge question mark in their hearts. What in the world happened in Space Scar Sky? Among the people present, only one person could guess what had happened. This person was Li Jueqing. Since the beginning of Lei Qingjuan's birthday banquet, Li Jueqing had been unusually low-key. Even when he came in with eunuch Gao and Leng Shiqi, he did not look at Leng Shiqi. Perhaps in his heart, Leng Shiqi was already a dead man. Why should he care about a dead man? After Leng Shiqi entered the Void Scar Sky, Li Jueqing couldn't help but laugh secretly. Everything was within his expectations. All he had to do now was to wait for Leng Shiqi's jade token to shatter. Unfortunately, what he waited for was the jade tablets of the people he had bribed to shatter. Li Jueqing knew that the plan had begun. He secretly clenched his fists. Li Jue's fourth uncle, you can't let Lu Xingji come out alive. In the yellow mud swamp of Space Scar Sky, Leng Shiqi's blood-stained Star Devil Saber lived up to its name. It was already stained with the blood of Spirit Astral Realm Masters. He stood in front of a corpse and murmured, "The 24th one." The blood-stained star devil saber made a gurgling sound, absorbing all the blood and turning it into a part of power to feed Leng Shiqi. Leng Shiqi killed more than 20 masters of spirit astral realm in a short time. Even if his spiritual power was abnormally strong, he still could not bear it. In order to kill with one blow, he used all his strength every time without holding back, so his spiritual power was greatly consumed. The blood-stained star devil saber's characteristic of nourishing itself with battle made him able to continue. However, the bad news was that the remaining dozen people were the most powerful ones. Most of them were from the Dark Thunder Guards, the Discipline Commission and the Patrol Guards. In particular, Li Juge and Fourth Uncle had already broken into the stone room at the beginning. Fortunately, Leng Shiqi was prepared. He had set up several stone rooms around them which could delay them for a little while. Faced with such a situation, it seemed impossible for him to wipe out all of these people. However, Leng Shiqi still held this idea firmly, because he was not alone. Leng Shiqi thought, and three figures appeared beside him out of thin air. They were Delta Orgi, Yushu and Xiongming. They had already woken up. At this time, each of them was filled with the qi of the underworld. Their aura was also vague, so no one could tell their real cultivation. Leng Shiqi whispered, "It's time for the underworld to appear." Then he shot 3 beams of spiritual light into the bodies of the 3 people, so that they could move freely in the earth-mixing formation. Leng Shiqi made a gesture with his hands, and most of the stone rooms in the formation disintegrated automatically. Except for Li Juge and Fourth Uncle, all the people were released. And he used all the power of the formation to trap the 2 strongest people. The dozen people were suddenly rescued. They thought that the formation had been broken, but what awaited them was the real hell. Xiongming was the first to make a move. He moved and disappeared. Suddenly, endless darkness appeared, and most of the yellow mud swamp was covered in darkness. For people in the gang spirit realm, they could see in the night, but they could not see anything in the darkness. The dozen people were a little panicked, but they were not idiots. They all used their spiritual skills, trying to use their gang spirit to illuminate an area. However, it was a pity that there was still no light, only endless darkness. No, not exactly. At this time, spots of jade light drifted out, swaying like willow branches, but in the darkness, they were creepy and horrible like ghosts. As the light spots flowed past, they unknowingly left streaks of blood on everyone's bodies, but they were still unaware of it. Because everyone was attracted by something above their heads. It turned out that a ferocious blood moon had appeared in the sky. It was not a pure blood moon, but there seemed to be countless ghosts dancing in it. What frightened people was that the blood moon was falling slowly, as if it was going to kill everyone. Delta Orgi and Xiongming had defeated the dozen masters with only the strength of 3 people. Chapter 675. At first, Leng Shiqi wanted to work together with the 4 of them to get rid of these people first, but now it seemed that the 3 of them had completely suppressed everyone else. Engming's curtain of darkness was amazing. Even Leng Shiqi had to rely on his supercilious eyes and powerful mental power to barely see. Yushu used some unknown method to injure people invisibly. Delta Orgi was even more terrifying. She seemed to have combined the inheritance of the underworld with her own cultivation method. The blood moon fell from the sky as if the sky was collapsing. After obtaining the inheritance of the underworld, their strength had skyrocketed to such an extent. This was something that Leng Shiqi did not expect. Not only their strength but the feeling they gave off was completely different. It was as if their cultivation realm could no longer be described simply by the spiritual cultivation system of this world. Delta Orgi and the other's strength had greatly increased. Leng Shiqi was naturally happy, but he was also a little speechless. Why didn't he get the inheritance? Since the 3 of them were enough to deal with the rest of the people, Leng Shiqi did not intend to interfere. He had stronger enemies to deal with. Leng Shiqi turned into a stream of light and entered a huge stone room. The person trapped inside was Li Juge. Li Juge had already shattered 3 or 4 stone walls in a row, but the strength of the stone walls suddenly skyrocketed. Even he had to go through a lot of trouble. He became more and more anxious and irritable, afraid that Leng Shiqi would escape. But at this time, Leng Shiqi appeared directly in front of him. "You didn't escape?" Li Juge asked in surprise. Leng Shiqi shook his head gently and said, "Why should I escape? I want to see how strong a unity of heaven realm cultivator can be with spiritual attachment." "Arrogant," Li Juge said ferociously, "since you don't escape, only death awaits you. Lung Shiqi raised the 10 directions floating snow spear. You Li family members like to talk nonsense. Li Zhangtao and Li Juning were the same. In the end they both died at my hands. Seeing the 10 directions floating snow spear, Li Juji's expression became even more terrifying. At the same time he said in surprise, "You really killed Li Juning? Impossible." Lung Shiqi snickered, thinking that this Li Juji's state of mind was not very good. "Believe it or not, that's up to you. By the way, you set up a giant ice net outside to contain my red gold earth dragon flame. Actually, I have to thank all of you. Right now, this place is filled with pure ice spiritual energy, which is just enough to display the power of the 10 directions floating snow spear." The long spear in his hand trembled, and the cold underworld breath filled the stone room. Specks of crimson ice crystals froze the stone walls, and the stone room instantly turned into a crimson hell. Li Jugu was also suffering. He used the spiritual adhesion technique to attach to Li Gang and could only exert a small part of his power. Moreover, he couldn't use power beyond the Gang spirit realm, or else he would be kicked out of the Void Scar Sky. Their original plan was to prepare the Ice Silk Giant Net and the art of spiritual adhesion, and then gather more than 30 Gang spirit realm cultivators to attack him together. No matter how strong the Lung Shiqi was, he could not escape death. But who would have thought that Lung Shiqi had already set up a formation in the Yellow Mud Swamp? And it was an earth trap formation. The earth trap formation was unique in a place like the Yellow Mud Swamp, and this formation was really difficult to deal with. Although it had no offensive power, it could greatly restrict everyone. If Li Jugu wanted to fight with Lung Shiqi one-on-one with the art of spiritual adhesion, he was not sure that he could kill Lung Shiqi. Moreover, Li Jugu had broken the stone walls several times in a row and consumed a lot of spiritual energy. Now he was already struggling to face the Crimson Hell. In particular, the nearby area was also covered with a layer of ice silk giant net, which greatly enhanced the activity of the ice spiritual energy and made the Crimson Hell more powerful. However, he could not give up. Li Juji's hands formed into claws, tore the ice crystals and went straight to Lung Shiqi. The Gang Chi brought by the biting cold claw was as sharp as a blade, and the Crimson Hell could not block it at all. He growled, "Boy, don't be too arrogant." The 10 directions floating snow spear in Lung Shiqi's hand was covered with a layer of golden scales. The spear shadows turned into bursts of golden waves, and smashed down overwhelmingly. Li Juji's offensive changed. His claws suddenly turned into fists, and immediately shattered the spear shadows. After 2 moves, Li Jugu realized that Lung Shiqi's strength was not as strong as he thought. He secretly said, "It seems that I overestimated him." However, a yellow light flashed in the depths of Lung Shiqi's eyes, and a strange force suddenly appeared in the stone room. Li Jugu immediately felt an invisible force pressing down on his head. Cracks appeared on the solid stone wall under his feet, and he couldn't even stand on his feet. Li Juji's Gang Chi burst out, and spiritual energy overflowed, barely stabilizing his body. What kind of power is this? It seems to be gravity. He was shocked. Of course, Lung Shiqi would not let go of such a good opportunity. He tilted his long spear and immediately threw the 10 directions floating snow spear directly. The spear body was like an ice dragon coming out of the sea, wrapped in crimson ice crystals, and went straight for Li Juji's forehead. At the same time, Lung Shiqi's hands behind his back turned into claws. Demonic chi soaked and the cold wind whistled. White bone claw shadows were about to tear Li Jugu into countless pieces. 9 white bone claw. Facing the 10 directions floating snow spear and 9 white bone claw, Li Jugu took a deep breath and pointed his finger. Suddenly, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth surged wildly, and a subtle finger force appeared to meet the 10 directions floating snow spear. With a loud clang, the seemingly weak finger force blocked the 7th level precious weapon 10 directions floating snow spear. However, the white bone ghost claws were already close to him. Li Jugu punched out, and the majestic fist force condensed, as if he was waiting for an attack. Lung Shiqi sneered and a light flashed behind his head. A small golden sword emerged and then shot out at an incredible speed. Sword of Primordial Spirit. Ever since he fought with Li Jugu, he had not used a powerful spiritual skill. First, he did not have much spiritual energy left. Second, he still had to face the more powerful enemy of the Li family's 4th uncle, so he needed to conserve his energy. Third, he had to find the most suitable opportunity to use the Sword of Primordial Spirit. Li Jugu and the Li family's 4th uncle must have known all the information about Lung Shiqi, but he had only comprehended the sword of primordial spirit a few days ago. Moreover, Li Jianghu had attached himself to Li Gang through spiritual adhesion. The biggest flaw of this kind of secret method was, of course, the extreme instability of spiritual energy, and the most terrible thing was spiritual attacks. Lung Shiqi was also worried about whether Li Jianghu had a treasure that could resist illusions, more or less able to block part of the spiritual attacks. Therefore, he needed to let Li Jianghu devote himself to the battle so that he had no time to protect his spiritual energy. Sure enough, when Li Jianghu discovered the sword of primordial spirit, his face suddenly showed a look of horror. Sword of primordial spirit, how is this possible? Nothing is impossible. Go back and tell Li Jucheng that sooner or later I will take his head. Lung Shiqi said sternly. The sword of primordial spirit slashed through. This kind of spiritual attack could not be defended against by ordinary means. The sword of primordial spirit directly penetrated Li Juji's forehead. Li Jianghu immediately let out a miserable scream. At this time, a pendant around his neck emitted bursts of light blue light to protect his spiritual energy. Lung Shiqi had expected this. His eyes flashed with 9-colored light and instantly shattered the blue light. Then the gray light all over Li Juji's body dissipated, revealing Li Gang's body. At this time, Li Gang had lost a lot of weight and was dying. Lung Shiqi took his life with a wave of his hand. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.